Good morning, everyone. We are Group 8. I'm Anima with my team, Phoebe, Emmanuel, and Nathan. We are here to present our presentation on strategic challenge question. And our strategic challenge question is, how can Australia determine the optimal mix and location of battery storage to maximize system value and ensure consumer equity? Let's take a look at the overview of the presentation. First, we would start with the background information about the challenge question, followed by unpacking the challenge, recommendations for solving the issue, and finally, some recommendations for professional development activities for existing workforce as well as the upcoming. Australia has seen increase in advancements in decarbonizing the grid. Utility scale solar as well as wind are getting integrated to the NEM at record-breaking levels. The announcement of coal generator retirements has created a lot of confusion in the power sector, and that is when AEMO steps in with this integrated system plan, which identifies an optimal development plan for a reliable energy transition. So it has also identified that a mix of generation, storage, and transmission network investments are required to meet our renewable energy targets. And it has identified a lot of classification for storage that would be required for decarbonization of the grid. We all know that utility scale batteries getting connected to the TNSP network are already providing wholesale electricity trading services, grid firming, grid security services, and FGAS. Looks like there is clarity of role for BESS in the transmission network side. But let's see what's happening at the distribution network side. At the distribution network side, DNSP networks, that is DNSP networks are observing network stability and security issues due to the proliferation of residential PV because the consumers get incentivized to export PV power to the grid. And in upcoming years, we would see a lot of grid-scale batteries behind meter orchestrated batteries and VPPs. But would that solve the issue that DNSP network is facing? Looks like that might not be enough. My team would look into this issue. I would like to pass it on to Phoebe. Thank you.
Thanks. So let's grab the clicker. Thank you. Before we dive into the technical details, I'm just going to take a moment to look at the consumer perspective. So for this, I'm going to ask for a little bit of audience participation. Don't worry, no volunteers, just a show of hands. So who here has solar panels on their rooftop? Yeah, quite a decent number. Keep your hand up if you also have a battery. Not so many. Is anyone part of a VPP? One person. Nice work. And who here feels locked out of consumer energy resources? Whether that's because you live in an apartment, you're a renter, or you just don't have the funds. Yeah, a few people? So this is our vision of the problem. On the left here, we have a group of children who are stuck outside in the cold. They are peering through the window at a family who are inside on Christmas Eve, all standing around sharing their presents. These kids are those of us who are left out of the CER revolution and are not able to benefit. And on the right is our vision of the new world. The same kids are now brought inside on Christmas Day and they've been given their presents and they're benefiting from this. They've got reduced electricity costs, they've got access to green energy. We really hope that this can happen across all levels and scales of battery and that everyone will get to benefit. Now back to the technical.
So the problem, at the moment, there is no system-wide and coordinated approach that effectively determines where battery energy storage systems should be installed across the NEM. So if you get the balance wrong today, there can be serious consequences, and there are technical, economic, and social risks involved. Some of the technical risks include the uncoordinated use of available network capacity, resulting into stranded and underutilized assets in both storage and network assets, the inability to offer stability and reliability services to the grid when needed. Economic risks, it's the misallocation of capital, so investing in projects that don't return high benefits, the inefficient investment and overinvestment on a single system level or location type. Inconsistent incentives across the NEM can lead to market confusion and reduction in investor confidence. In terms of socials, it's the widening of inequity. So some consumers would have the ability to access market value, whilst others will completely miss out, including lower income earners and renting households. So they face the risk of being left out in the CER-DER revolution. Some of the contributing factors, in terms of technical, the current ISP and joint planning frameworks between TNSPs and DNSPs, they don't consciously co-optimize the storage locations between transmission and distribution systems. Predominantly, the focus has been on network augmentation needs to deliver energy to the grid, rather than optimizing battery and generation locations. The implementation of multiple revenue streams or value stacking strategies, that would allow BESS plans to provide multiple services. They're pretty challenging at the moment because there's lack of financial incentives and regulatory frameworks that are currently available out there. In terms of economic, I'll mention the economies of scale issues. So as a developer, would you rather negotiate for a single 500 megawatt battery versus 105 megawatt batteries, knowing that grid connection studies and processes can be complex and it takes a long time to negotiate a project into completion? So for us, all technical engineers out here, I'll throw this in. So hopefully it'll showcase an example where a utility scale BESS can provide multiple services, not only in being a NEM Chapter 5 participant, so participating in energy arbitrage and frequency regulation, but also providing grid services when the network is under a credible contingency. So imagine a multiple transmission bus network, multiple bus transmission network, where substation E and F are forecast to see significant load growth. Assume the loads are very peaky. Under an N-1 credible contingency event between, losing a line between A and F, you're likely to have thermal constraints and overloads on the upstream transmission network. If you were to place a Chapter 5 or a utility scale BESS at substation F, not only that plant participates in the NEM as they bid and commit to NEM requirements, but they can also provide grid support under a credible contingency event like this, because it's got the ability to inject real active power and reactive power, therefore supporting in alleviating the network constraints on the upstream network. I'll now hand over to Nate.
Key stakeholders. We mapped our key stakeholders' interest levels versus influence levels to determine where our focuses should be aimed. We have our 4 quadrants. Key players. These are our network service providers, transmission and distribution. We have our policymakers, energy regulators, CER owners, which is customers with solar, batteries, or other controllable loads like hot water systems and electric vehicles. These have been identified as our key players with high interest and high influence. Then we have our show consideration, which is high interest but lower influence. And then we meet their needs is low interest, high influence, and notify, which is low interest and low influence. Recommendations. We recommend greater collaboration between the network service providers and the Australian energy market operator to develop a system-wide optimization model of the national electricity market. To determine the optimal mix and location of battery energy storage systems based on various constraints such as the capacity of the grid, the location of other BESS, the operating range of the BESS, and whether it's performing functions like deep, medium, shallow storage, or system security. We recommend increasing the scope of the integrated system plan to include this optimal mix and location of BESS. The integrated system plan should also take into consideration the distribution network system and feed into its modelling. Review of ring fencing and other relevant Australian energy regulated guidelines such that batteries can be installed to provide multiple functions. For example, distribution network service providers being able to participate in the market as well as providing voltage support and peak lopping. It's also very important for network service providers to work closely with original equipment manufacturers to ensure a single standard across the NEM to ensure that compliance and facilitate seamless connections to the different network service providers' infrastructure and distributed energy resource management systems.
So we're going to am I on? We're going to finish up with workforce and skills gap issues and then professional development. So the first one we've identified here is insufficient bodies on the ground. I heard a statistic in the last 2 weeks at this summer school that we're going to need 50% more people in this industry by 2030. So we're going to need to put a lot of work into getting more people in. So we need, power systems engineers, we need data scientists and energy modelers, we need renewable energy project managers, technicians, and installers. The second one I've pulled out is the limited policy and regulatory knowledge. There's a lot of us who are very deep technical experts, and we know all about our own sort of area of expertise, but we don't necessarily appreciate all of the details of the technical and regulatory space in which we work. And the third one I've got here is the poor integration between industry and academia. Research projects and outcomes are not necessarily directly being used by industry, and so the results may be underutilized. And here I've got some recommendations primarily for students and grads, but honestly everyone in this room would probably benefit from some of these. The first one we've got is power system analysis and simulation, which is something that I have never done in my desk job, but I've been told that it's quite useful for doing planning studies and figuring out where we need to upgrade the network. Then we've got programming and data analysis. This is closer to me. We can use tools such as Python, to analyze all of the big data that we've got coming in from smart meters, from generators, from SCADA, and find ways to use this efficiently. Then we've got AI prompt engineering. If I've learned one thing from this summer school, it's that AI is happening and we can't avoid it. And so we should all learn how to use it effectively to make our jobs easier and to sort of get rid of the menial tasks. And the last one is mentorship. Find people in the industry that you can work from, who can provide you with guidance and support, and connect with them. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening. And we'll open the floor to questions.
Hey guys, great presentation. Just a question on your solutions, right? I really liked your point about greater coordination and planning between DNSPs and AMO. How do you think that could be put into effect? Do you think it's a cultural change? Do you think it's establishing a body? Like, how do you think we'd go about doing that?
Good question. So we really need more collaboration between the different DNSPs and TNSPs. Right now, we kind of work in our own areas and we don't communicate as well as we should. So that is critical. Events like this is good. It's a good start. And just any occasion where you can, interact with other DNSPs, more events, more partnering.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. I think what's happening in the distribution world, they need to be considered as inputs into the ISP. I think there's been a rule change more recently where the data from distribution or DNSPs need to been requested to be fed into the AEMO system. So that's a positive thing. So yeah, part of it's already happening, but that needs to continue to happen even more and more. Yeah.
Sorry, just before we jump to the next question, can I just get you to introduce yourself just for the live stream?
Of course. Sorry. Harsh Shakawat, lead engineer, Endeavour Energy.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Anula Begunawardana from AMO. I'm doing market modeling for the ISP. This is just not a question, just a comment. So I just want to tell that in 2020 ISP, we are incorporating the CR into the optimization of the ISP. If you want to get the more details, we just published the draft methodology for 2026 ISP. You can get more details on our approach. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I'm Holly from AMO. I just had a question about how do you envision the DNSPs becoming more active market participants?
Well, that will require rule changes. Right now, we are not allowed to participate in the market. And so that requires, the EER to change their regulations and guidelines.
Yeah, I'll head on again. So DNSPs, I think they see value in the small BESS in the order of 5 megawatts and under as a solution to defer capital expenditure as a technical solution. But being DNSPs, there's that obviously the ring fencing issue that needs to be. I guess that's the problem. There's the work needs to happen to allow DNSPs to allow these solutions to be implemented, but obviously getting around the ring fencing requirements.
Yeah, and going to a retailer isn't always the best for value because you're losing out.
Thank you for the presentation. Kieran Spate, Electronet. What surprised you the most as you dived into your challenge question?
For me, it was the amount of collaboration between all stakeholders and, how do we drive in a quicker manner rule changes to suit our needs.
I'm not sure if it'll answer this, but I forgot to mention in the talk earlier that, these BESS, they can provide multiple services, right? But I forgot to mention there's a bit of work that needs to happen in terms of coming up with a framework to allow for them to contribute and provide all those services. So for going back to the example where, Chapter 5 BESS in the transmission network, they can provide grid support, but at the moment, there's no financial incentives for them to do that. So in the future, part of this, hopefully, there would be more work to be done, that will be done, that, that aims to monetize more financial incentives so that they can offer everything that they're capable of.
Alrighty, we are going to call it good there for questions. So can I get a massive round of applause for this group?
So I would like to start by saying that I would like to acknowledge and pay my respect to the Bunurong people, who are the traditional custodians on the land we meet today, and to their elders past and present. So our agenda today will cover introduction to the team, understanding the challenge, recommended actions to address the challenge, followed by conclusion, recommendations for professional development, and finally Q&A. So the team. As any project or any work we start, often we are in the drafting stage. So that's a sketch, not by me or Picasso, but just from the computer. We then go into the in-construct stage as we gel together, know our strengths and weaknesses, followed by the finalize, the team as you see here. So from left to right, it's Ajay, in the photograph, sorry, left to right. Ajay from Wilson Transformers, Nat from Western Powers, Deepthi from PowerLink, Michael from Horizon Powers, and myself, Anu, from Energy Queensland. Nat?
So the challenge statement put to us was, if you held a pen, what would you do? What would you design as the fundamentals of the future energy system? Would you have the same view of reliability, affordability, and security? In other words, would the performance characteristics be the same, or should we accept more risk and allow more volatility in the performance of the system in the interest of having a lower cost solution? To understand the challenge, the team had to look at the existing power network. The existing power system is predominantly comprised of centralised synchronous generators, and we have defined rules around performance metrics and balancing those with affordability. However, the transition towards net zero emissions has accelerated the integration of decentralised inverter-based generation sources onto the grid. This is making it harder to balance those performance metrics with affordability.
Yeah, so just expanding a little bit further on that. So our current legacy systems are built on around these centralized generations, deterministic planning, and clear regulatory standards, which has given us decades of relatively cheap or reliable and affordable electricity. But the world is changing as we know it. We're now navigating a more dynamic, decarbonized and decentralized energy future. And the risks we face, from climate events to cyber threats to customer-led disruptions, are evolving faster than our traditional models can handle. Today, our current system is showing its age. Centralized generation creates a single point of failure, especially with increasing climate volatility, bushfires, floods, heat waves, and other environmental factors. Planning standards like the N-1 contingency assumes that we can predict and control certain events, but they fall short in a distributed energy, variable renewables, and real-time market shifts. And while our regulatory frameworks have delivered efficiency, they now risk holding back innovation, making it hard for flexible technologies to be implemented. So we need to rethink the way we design the energy system, not to just manage yesterday's problems, but to also build a better energy future. So in terms of thinking about the future energy system, there's a couple of things to consider when we're thinking about the design of them. So first, we need to consider the resilience. So our existing infrastructure was designed for reliability, but resilience is different. It's the ability to adapt, recover, and operate under pressure. So this means that we're not designing just for failure prevention, but for rapid recovery. Second is flexibility. So the energy system is becoming more dynamic, so this static planning and fixed tariffs can't keep up. We need systems and markets that can respond in real time. Third is visibility. As we know that we've got millions of DER assets that are somewhat invincible to system operators. So we need to have better data and control, otherwise we're just going to be flying blind. Fourth is equity. So the one-size-fits-all approach is a risk to all, especially to small communities, to small and remote communities all around Australia. So we need to think locally, not just nationally. And finally is coordination. A lot of the risks that within the sector are increasingly crossing over between networks, markets, governments, and consumers, but they're still all managed in silos in most cases. So we need to have better collaboration and more dynamic risk models that can be implemented.
Thank you, Michael. Coming back to the question, so if we had a pen and we had to redesign the network again, how would we do it? Our answer is a flexible, decentralized, smart energy system that empowers community, ensures resilience and resilience and embrace innovation while accepting more performance risk in exchange for long-term affordability and sustainability. Let me explain in bit detail what we're referring here. As Michael explained, our old energy network was more like a centralized power generation where we have large power plants like coal and gas which generates electricity being transmitted over a long distance transmission line stepped down to the local distribution. It was more like a one-way flow of energy. Thanks for the innovation in technology, now we can generate electricity over a rooftop. So the solution what we proposed was the decentralized system. In simple words, what is decentralized system? Decentralized energy system is an approach to generate electricity where the power is produced closer to where it is being consumed. Let me give you an example. Imagine this. You have a house with a solar panel on its roof and a big battery down in the basement. For a treat, let's consider a small wind turbine over the roof for the extra power. Now, scale it up. Picture every house in your neighborhood doing exactly the same. Panel on the roof, battery in the basement. Then imagine every building in your city following the same. More panel, bigger batteries. All working together, connected to the grid, makes now the city one giant power plant. Let me explain to you the working principle of this decentralized energy system. During a sunny day or a windy night, each house generates its own power and charges its battery. Once the battery is full, the extra energy is fed back to the grid. Probably the neighbor can use it to charge their battery. Now, the same principle applies to the whole city. Extra energy is generated, put back to the grid. If at all the neighbor wants energy, the neighbor can use the extra energy to consume it. Now the problem is, there's always a house or a business not using much energy and people are not home or not using the power. So this excess energy is put back to the grid, which causes the problem, peak load. I can see you guys thinking of that already. So when the surplus energy is put back to the grid, that can cause peak load and can also peak demand. Let's say every day, everybody cooks at the same time or charging the EV cars at the same time. That can cause a peak demand as well. For that, the solution what we found was having big shade batteries around the city. We'll be still connected to the grid, so we still have different energy sources connected to the grid. Could be like solar plant, hydro, or small nuclear plants. The benefit with this is, if there's a storm or other disaster hits, more traditional grid go dark. Probably hundreds or 1,000 houses would go dark. But with our system, we can have the own battery, so there is no single point of failure. We still can isolate the damaged section and keep the rest of the grid and those batteries running smoothly. Few other options what we consider was the smart meters, AI system, and real-time demand management. With this solution, we are not just a consumers, we are prosumers, which means we can generate, use, and sell electricity. Even with cybersecurity, it's harder for the hackers to take down the whole grid. Now, my colleague Ajay will be explaining a bit more details on the other solution. Thank you.
Thanks, Diti. My next recommended actions will be towards the needed technology developments for the future power systems. First is developing an ecosystem around hydrogen as an energy source and storage. With climate change in the discussion, many countries started to work on the hydrogen solutions and are still working, but didn't make a significant progress due to the high cost and research cost involved in it. We believe that innovative technologies developed at scale, efficiency, and affordability can be increased with the innovative technology and development. We believe no technology dies. It evolves till it is fully developed, scaled, and made affordable. We have two examples in front of us. One is a solar panel. When it started, it was a very high cost energy source, but today, as the scalar production, it has made the solar power the most cheapest energy sources available now. Second is electric car technology. It existed before the IC engine overtook it, but with the development of batteries, motors, and controls, it is now at its best and helping us in the net zero targets. Second is the system frequency and inertia supporting energy storage and supply power solutions. We already have pumped hydro, frequency forming battery packs, and synchronous condensers, but we need more to buffer peak loads, maintain grid strength and stability, and reduce the system risk. Third is developing because, as Diti said, decentralized systems. There will be, when we are developing a smart auto-controlled, there will be a need for developing a smart auto-controlled decentralized grid to maximize the customer's benefit. It will be very difficult to control the grid when we have thousands of decentralized inverter-based power generators and consumers. AI and machine learning algorithms will be required for fast and efficient system control in the real time and more accurately forecasting system and demands. Last is enhanced security system to protect the internet-driven power system. It will be the need of the time. And we need to protect it from the hackers and ransomwares. We don't want Mission Impossible teams to hack our teams and play on our grid. Next to Michael.
And thank you guys for that. And just to close it off before we go into the recommendations a little bit, just wanted to say that this is essentially our call for action, that we're not just dealing with technical upgrades here. This is a complete mindset shift that we need to consider. So the future requires flexibility, resilience, and speed of adaptation. We're not designing for a future that is risk-free, but we're designing for a future where we understand, share, and adapt to risk better. By embracing technological innovation, flexible market frameworks, and ongoing professional development, we can create a future energy system that optimally balances reliability, security, and affordability, and acceptable operational risk. So I'll just get you to do some recommendations for our.
Sure. Thanks, Michael. So final slide, recommendations for professional development activities. As you can see, we have divided up into training and education, practical experience, soft skill development, and also staying informed. All these are key elements for overall growth. Definitely doing the right degree, followed by following a career path that you think is right in this industry for you, and topmost social skills. Knowing the project management side of things, being a project manager myself, is highly recommended. Thank you. Questions?
Hi all, thanks for the presentation. Chris Wilson from AMO in Western Australia. Could you maybe elaborate a bit more on some of the acceptable operational risks that we could look at taking in our system? And maybe a follow-on from that, how do you think that will work, I guess, from a political landscape where risks are acceptable as long as they don't happen?
Thank you for the question. Great question. So, I think there is, Peter has explained earlier, Peter has already, Endeavour Energy has already created a grid, microgrid project already in NSW. So it is going well. There's a few challenges, but still they have been able to do it. With respect to the regulations, now, when we got this project question, it was a bit challenging for us because we had to consider. So the question was more like, if at all you had a pen and we had to redesign everything again, would we consider the grid which is already existing, or would we redesign everything since the beginning? So that was a bit challenging question for us. So we considered thinking that there is no network at the moment, and we had to redesign the grid from the scratch, without considering any policies, regulations, the other challenges. So, but in real life, when we're putting the decentralized, it can be a bit challenging because initially the cost is expensive, but if you think the long term, it's still cheaper compared to putting the long transmission line. And they can be always, as you said, there can be challenges with the government regulation and regulatory side of stuff as well. So with that, I'm not really sure how it's going to go. But yeah, that's what it is.
Alrighty, so we're just going to pass now to the amazing Hayley Credaro with a question from our online audience.
Okay, thank you for that. So I have a question for Michael. What is deterministic planning?
Good question. Yeah, that's a good question as well. I think it's more, a lot of it is just going in line with a lot of our planning standards. We tend to go with this, we use a N-1 as part of our planning standards, but I think for deterministic is more looking into a scenario-based when we're considering up the standards, looking at different scenarios and then trying to come up with optimal solutions from that.
Thank you. So that was from one of our online participants. So keep them coming through online.
All right, hello, it's Kai from Horizon Power. Great work, guys. Good presentation. My question is, what roadblocks do you think will stifle or stop this future grid of yours, and how do you think you would go about removing those roadblocks?
So, Kai, one of the first things is our current policies and procedures that are in place. They are set in stone based on what we have right now. When we are redoing what we have to bring government as one of our key stakeholders to actually sit with them, and then think about that. So that's where we would start with.
We had another question. Someone over here had their hand. All right.
Thank you for your presentation. Larry Lim, Energy Queensland. If you were to redo everything, would you keep the same power industry organisations, or would you have different types?
In 1 minute.
Amazing question. We'll discuss over gala, but I think so.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, so.
One quick question, like a 10-second question.
One more really concise
Who's got one up here? Someone had one?
Oh, we've got one here.
All right, go. Really quick.
What did you enjoy the most doing the presentation? Easy question.
The most amazing part was that we were all 72 degrees apart, going away, but we brought ourselves together at a point from where we can give the solutions to the challenge question.
Oh, we can do, because you guys have done such a brilliant job, we can do one more question.
Yeah, we've got one last question here. Sam, did you have one?
Hi, I'm Sam from AEMO. Your recommendation for a decentralised grid has a high reliance on solar. Do you see any risk in maybe not diversifying our energy sources?
Well, we're not just considering solar, we're also considering multiple sources. We still are connected to the grid where we have solar, we have nuclear, we have hydropower, and as we still generating electricity over rooftops, there'll be always a backup as well. So the other generation is still there, but the main generation would be from your house.
And Sam, just to quickly add to that, this is just solar. As an example for our presentation, there is consideration for hydro, wind, other, but we had to stick to the timeline. Thank you all.
Yeah, no, thank
All
you.
right. But big round of applause.
Morning, everyone. Myself, Vishnu Ram, Senior Substation Design Engineer from Energy Queensland, and my teammates, I have Anula from AMO, I have Tatiana from Task Networks, and Brad from Transgrid. I would like to begin with quickly the acknowledgement of country. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would like to pay my respects to elder past and present. Strategic challenge. How can we ensure local communities and traditional owners genuinely and enduringly share the economic benefits of Australia's next resources boom, the transition to renewable energy? This challenge defined by Jasmine Dobb, Executive Director from VicGrid. Just before I go into the topic, I just want to quickly ask, is Jasmine in the room today? Hey, Jasmine. I'm nervous now. So... anyone in the room have dealt with land acquisition or negotiation with traditional owners? And yep, few hands, very few. That's good. As a substation design engineer myself, I think about safety in design, operation and maintenance of assets, and the longevity. But I never thought about the land itself. My assets gonna long there like 30 years, but I always short-sighted about the land acquisition or the social licensing challenges in the energy industry. So API, and thanks to API and Jasmine to posing this question and pushing ourselves to think about this ongoing issue in the industry right now at the moment in this big transition, energy transition. Also, based on the deep diving and the information that we found out, there is no mandatory national-wide social licensing to operate, but also to give benefits to the local communities and the traditional owners. So hopefully our work for the last couple of weeks will give some guidelines and the information for everyone to think of, also to the government bodies, to legalize and mandate these functions and provide the benefits to the local communities and the traditional owners in the society. So the core challenge statement I want to talk about is what are the challenges, what are the current patterns that we can see in the industry at the moment. So basically, we need to engage traditional owners and the local communities well in advance, not just as consultees, but treat them as equity holders, innovators, and long-term partners in benefit sharing. Of course, there are some challenges. In any journey, you will come up with challenges, and the key challenges that I want to talk about is the unfair economic participation by the traditional owners and local communities. And the next one is about the mandated that I talked about. There is no national-wide mandated rules for the benefit sharing, but also for the framework is available as well. There's some guidelines is available, but there's not a mandated legal requirement for that. So that needs to improve. And there is a lot of lack of trust within the community, within the government, in the industry and the traditional owners. And the last one I want to talk about is the persistent skills and workforce gaps within both government institution and the communities themselves. So to face these challenges, we need to approach with fairness, inclusive, and long-term sustainability as well. So this quote resonates me a lot. I worked in regional parts, Northern Territory, Alice Springs, and Darwin. So we cannot have a just transition to net zero without First Nations ownership of the solution. Tyrone Garstone, CEO of Kimberley Land Council. We need to take them with the journey. Every community's needs and benefits, their requirements are different. Someone need health, someone need education, infrastructure development, clean water, affordable electricity. So I think we need to address an approach which answers all that. I just want to quickly dive into the current state of play. So the current state of play as of now, Australia has set an ambitious target of 82% renewable electricity generation by 2030 by within the national electricity market. So the transition state is about in 5 to 10 years' time, which is massive grid expansion, project rollout expected, and the rise of large-scale renewables on or near indigenous land, increased scrutiny on social licensing and benefit sharing. Other one is introduction of First Nations Clean Energy Network and federal guidelines. But there is unpredictable political environment at the moment. We all have seen in last 2 weeks a debate about renewable energy versus nuclear energy. So there's volatility in there. Mixed record of community engagement, some innovation. Peter have mentioned to us yesterday about that Endeavour Energy project was great, but many failures. Workforce and resource scarcity, delays in approvals, and the shortage in the skill force. So the last point is about, again, the rapid acceleration of renewable energy projects, and the transition state would be the potential growth for negative community sentiment in lack of shared benefits. I'm going to invite Tatiana to talk about understanding the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishnu. So we identified gaps, risks, and opportunities. While Victoria has made strides in community benefit sharing, there remains a need for co-design frameworks that involve traditional owners. Initiatives like Clean Economic Workforce Development Strategy still require further investment and collaboration. The Federation of Victorian Traditional Owner Corporations plays a crucial role in bringing together traditional owners with legal and energy sector experts. But there is a continued need for facilitators between traditional owners, government, and industry stakeholders. The establishment of renewable energy zone, community energy funds allows communities to apply for funding for projects that improve power supply, lower energy bills, and create energy jobs. Initiatives like State Electricity Commission's Center of Training Excellence aim to prepare the state's workforce for a net zero future, emphasizing inclusive participation. We analyzed the stakeholders related to our project and prioritized traditional owners, local communities, and federal and state governments as our main ones, and choose federal state governments as the most influential. So let's deep dive into Australian federal state governments. Cautiously optimistic, but face internal conflicts due to bureaucracy, political cycles, and limited trust from communities. Influenced by competing interests and external pressures from voters, industry, and media. Seek streamlined legislation, trusted partnerships, and long-term community-driven success stories. The best way to involve governments is to present solutions that align with their core policy objectives, such as climate targets, economic development, and social equity, while reducing political, legal, and reputational risks. And I would like to involve Anula to continue.
Thank you, Ted. So with this introduction, I'm going to talk about our approach to tackle this challenge. To tackle this challenge, we frame our approach through the lenses of old world versus new world models. Okay, the old world sees the land as a resource to be accessed, and often top-down consultation. So this model has led to mistrust, resistance, and failed social license to the renewable energy projects. And so our metaphor for this old world is imagine a grand orchestra performing a symphony. And the conductor is standing on the podium, leading with sweeping gestures, and the musicians, they meticulously follow the score, but the conductor has never consulted the composers, the traditional owners, and the local communities, whose the cultural melodies and rhymes or the rhythms are the integral part of to this piece. As a result, the symphony lacks the harmony and missing the authentic note that gives the soul and the meaning. Okay, so then now to our new world. Okay, we are moving to the two-way partnership rooted with respect, co-design, and benefit sharing. And the land is seen as a cultural living landscape. Okay, then our metaphor for this new world, imagine two rivers. It's with its own unique course, merging to form a single, more powerful stream. One river brings ancient wisdom, cultural richness, and deep connection to the traditional owner's land. The other carries the contemporary knowledge, the technical advancement, and a modern perspective. As they converge, they don't dilute. They combine their strength to form a unified flow that nourishes the land and support the diverse ecosystem and charts a course toward the sustainable and inclusive future. Okay. Now, Brad will talk about our approach to creating this new world. Thank you.
Thank you. So Australia is currently on its way to the new world. Australia's benefit sharing practices in renewable energy is still developing. We've listed some of the schemes or frameworks that we have in each state and organization. However, the issue there is there's no framework on the national level. Often these frameworks or schemes lacks measurability and enforceability. And the implementation of this are often voluntary and inconsistent. So our recommendation for this issue is if we look across the ocean to some of the other countries, what are they doing is that, I have to speed this up a bit, is, for example, in Canada, it's a legal requirement to benefit share with indigenous communities. And that's something we need to work towards as well. We need to have a nationally consistent, enforceable and measurable frameworks, and we wish to mandate that or provide some sort of incentive schemes in the transition phase in the future. Now, bringing some reality into the consideration, there's no point of having a framework that doesn't work and it's just gonna sit on the shelf. So some of the feasibility concerns includes government and policy. Are we gonna have the sustained political will to navigate us through this current political volatility? In terms of operations and administrative, do we have enough resource in the workforce to do this? Stakeholders and community. So it's the framework needs to be both differentiating against all different sort of local communities across Australia, but also inclusive. And it's not always about who gets the benefit, but most importantly is who defines the benefits. There's no universal definition of how do we quantify social benefits. And finally, money is the driven factor for most things. Are we going to have the same level of investor enthusiasm? Is it going to impact project development in the future? All right. So I asked a lot of questions in this section, which we don't have a correct or one single answer to them. So if you're going to ask me the question after this, my answer is probably going to be very similar to that's a very good question. So. But what we can do as a workforce is we need to identify the current gaps in our workforce. So these are some of the stuff that we've listed, and we wish to further develop our current workforce. First of all, mismatch of skills. So the people and the technical people are very different. The people often don't lack the industry knowledge to make an actual impact in the designs, where the technical people don't really have the community training, the engagement training, and the public relations training. There's a significant First Nation underrepresentation in the workforce, which further impacts cultural awareness and leadership decisions. And also, there's a lack of career security. People jump from project to project. This is especially true for local communities where they lack the certification and the network to secure their job into the next project. All right, conclusion. So we want to develop a framework that's measurable, transparent, and consistent across the nation. And we wish to provide incentive schemes to transition into a mandate for that. And we believe through the right implementation and administration, we can ensure that the economic benefit for renewable energy can be genuinely and enduringly shared with local communities and traditional owners. Thank you.
All right, great work on that quick wrap up there. That was brilliant. So moving on to questions. So again, if you're tuning in online, please do click on the link at the bottom of your screen and add your questions into this group's time slot here. So moving on to question time for our live audience. Who has a question?
Hi, Ulrika from AEMO. Thank you so much for that presentation. I was curious, have you seen throughout your research good examples of benefit sharing and what that actually looked like?
I mean, yes and no. So the question is, how do we define good? There are existing schemes. For example, in New South Wales, we have the strategic benefit sharing scheme for transmission for landowners who is going to host a transmission line tower on their property. So that's not a once-off payment; it's a payment throughout 20 years to ensure that we're not just paying the landowner. We're putting this tower there. We know this tower is going to be there for the next 20 to 40 years. Therefore, you should be getting that benefit. That has somewhat improved the general landowner sentiment, but again, as we discussed today, the issue is it's not consistent across the country. You could be in this state, you're getting this benefit, and you'd be in another state next door, and you're not getting the benefit.
Just to add on that, after this question, I started reaching out to my contacts, project managers in different utilities, and the answers are different, very inconsistent. Like Brad mentioned, it's not a nationwide mandate, so every project, every entity have their own structure, own framework, but it's not like a nationwide framework where the benefits can be shared with the local communities and traditional owners. Yeah.
All right, any more questions? Yep.
Thanks very much. Jay Young from AEMO. Throughout this talk, we've talked about traditional owners and local communities with those terms, but there is a lot of diversity even within those groups. And you just mentioned that it's case by case. Now, that implies you need flexibility, especially if you talk about partnership. But you've also emphasized federal requirements, which might indicate some sort of uniformity across. Do you see any potential conflict between those two concepts?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So then our proposed approach is the federal government or national level, we put the minimum requirement. We know that the one size doesn't fit for all these communities and these things, but with this minimum standard, that there should be a flexibility, and then we define, what we want is to define the minimum standard, and then we want to develop the roadmap that says that with that flexibility, what are that should be included in the different communities. That is our proposed approach.
So also just to add on to that, so that's a very good question. So that's why the framework needs to be both differentiating against different communities. So people from the coastline will want different things to people who is doing farming and grazing in the middle of Australia. So therefore, to develop that framework, we need to bring all of those people into along with the journey, make sure all of their voice are heard, and it's more than just, it needs to be more than just symbolic. They actually need to be able to communicate their needs, and that should be enforced in the framework.
And just to add on that, it will be very challenging because every community needs are different. Like I briefly touched on, they may need a health system, they may need clean water, they may need a bit of training and education, and they need health system. So to hear all those voices, of course, we need to start having that transparent communication with these communities and take them on the journey as well, because without their support and their inclusive, it's hard to attain what we need to sort of in this renewable transition. Thank you.
We might just move on to another question. Great question though.
Thank you, Jasmine from VicGrid. Really fabulous, thank you. I just wanted to especially note the difference, I guess, from the first time we spent time together and the questions that you're asking through to now. Like, it's just quite extraordinary, the evolution of your thinking and your commitment to this topic. So a huge thank you to that. And my question is, I was wondering if you would be prepared to come to VicGrid executive meeting and present your project and talk to our executive team.
Hearing from that feedback is such an honor, and it's 2 weeks. It's been really challenging for us, reading a lot of things in website and gaining that information. It's out of our comfort zone. We all technical experts. You give us a issue, we will come up with any technical answers. But this issue is a really ongoing issue, and we would love to be part of that. And anytime, I'm pretty sure Energy Queensland and AMO, Transgrid and TAS Networks would love to sort of co-design this solution with VicGrid anytime. Thank you.
All right, wonderful.
Elam, we've got Renfeng, one of our suppliers, and I've got Warwick, our community and environmental representative. So first of all, I just want to congratulate the team and for all the hard work that they've done to date, delivering a number of major transmission projects. And I don't want this to be a blame game, but obviously I want to acknowledge that we obviously have had a few major cost blowouts and delays, and the executive team are wondering what the reasons for these delays are, so what challenges we've faced, and how we might address these moving forward in future transmission projects. So we're going to do 2 rounds. The first one to outline the challenges each of us stakeholders have had, and then the second one to look at what recommendations we have for the future. So I'll start. I'm the project manager, and obviously the project delivery team has had a number of issues. The first one was just gaining sufficient funding early in the project to sufficiently develop the project. We've found that we've had insufficient funds to complete all the conceptual designs and the detailed designs to the point that we want them to be in order to secure the transmission line route and the property acquisition that we need to support the project. Along with this, while we commenced the environmental approvals, we didn't get through that process before we reached the financial investment decision. So that led to issues down the track. Secondly, we created a whole new delivery team to deliver these major projects, so a whole new structure within the business. And that led to a number of issues just in terms of making sure that everyone was across what they were responsible and accountable for. And so sometimes we ended up with some multiple chains reporting on the same issues up to management, and so something that I think needs to be addressed. And also the EPC contractor model that we used, we had a lack of experience with this model, and with the inexperience of the contractor having not delivered major projects within Australia before and not having experience with our standards, then that led to some issues that I'm sure she'll get into. And I guess lastly, just with COVID happening, originally we priced the project before COVID, and then during construction, the construction costs went up significantly, and that had a huge impact upon our budget. I'll just pass on to Carol, our design manager, to express her issues that she's had.
Thank you, David. My name is Carol Cheng. I'm the design manager for this project. I want to share the 4 major challenges that we've experienced. I'll talk you through them slowly. So the first one is multiple design changes. Now we've had multiple design changes throughout this project phase, even in construction as well. As you can see, it will cause a lot of angst to our EPC contractor and our suppliers as well. Now, what caused those design changes? Well, some are from late feedback from our stakeholders. Now, some are from late decision making or decision changes from upstream, which is out of our control. And obviously, for a project that's been quite long, there's natural scope, creep, and evolutions. So the next one I want to talk about is the lack of national design standards. We spend a significant amount of time at the beginning of the project to develop new specification for primary plant, new specification for tower types. And as you can see, we don't even have expertise half the time, so we have to go and look for expertise from outside the organization. So that all took time and resource. The third one I want to talk about is a non-issue, the disconnected workflows between the design disciplines. I want to say it's non-issue because it's existing, everyone know about it. Each function tends to operate in its own silo. So without the integrated approach, we're bound to see interface errors. Now, at smaller scale project, people just live with it. But when you go work on a massive project, then those errors multiplies. So the very last one I want to talk about as a challenge is the inconsistent take up with the digital tools. We see some design disciplines already started 3D modeling, whereas the other design disciplines are still working in Excel. So without an integrated approach, we cannot identify errors in the early on. Thank you. And I'll pass the mic to Ellen.
I'm Ellen. I'm the contractor for this project. I'm really glad that eventually 5 of us as a stakeholder got together to hear the challenges and a problem that we were facing. I heard that David and Carol mentioned that our contractor didn't have enough experience, but let's just face it, neither of us have had experience in such a major project and with this level of complexity. Apart from that, lack of earlier stage plan in Warwick, we often had crew ready to be mobilized to the site, but then the land access was not approved yet. And the design and the supply, which I'm really keen to hear from supply, it was a massive delay in supply. We had to shut down the site for quite a bit. We engaged the subcontractor for this construction stuff, but then it was a big mismatch between the supply logistic and also the construction schedule. I just want to hear from you after this. But last but not the least, the design. Halfway through construction, we were still receiving ready for construction design, which I find it somewhat interesting. David, you're not hiding behind. So the flow of information from TNSB was somewhat poor, I would say. It was us reaching out to you to provide information rather than you providing to us, which I pass it to supply stakeholder. I'm really keen to hear from you.
Thank you, Adam, for pointing out. As you know, I'm the supplier for Brazil. As a supplier, the biggest challenge we face is, of course, the supply chain disruption. As PM mentioned and contractor complained. But this is due to the publicly known reason, such as the COVID, the war, the liberation tariff. Sorry, not my fault. And then the second challenge we face is late involvement, which we actually got involved in the project at a quite late stage and after the major design decision was made. That leaves us little time to flag any supply chain issue or provide alternative plans. And then also another challenge is the customization demands for products such as the PNC transformer or whatever other major plants that has non-standard specs that will increase the time and cost in our supply process. And then last but not least is the raw material price change. The example is the copper we use. To maintain the best quality of our product, we actually had little voice on that on that price change. That supply change, that price finally will be reflected in our final product. With that, I will pass on to Warwick. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Dave for getting us all together again. It's good to have the band back together. Woo! I'm conscious, as much like the project, we're very short on time. We've only got this meeting room for 15 minutes, so I'm going to rush through what my sketchy notes. So for this project, we had a newly spun up community, land and environment team, or so I should say teams, and we had a challenge that we didn't quite understand the scope of the popular discipline and how it affected the other disciplines within the team. An example of this would be working with the engagement and the environment teams in order to gain access to sites before they've been acquired to do the environmental planning and assessments. And the regulations don't automatically give us access to a site before we've acquired it, but we need to get to the site before we know whether we want to acquire it. It's a bit of a pickle. One of the biggest challenges we had across the three teams was that in order to provide landowners with information and to successfully engage, the information must be fit for purpose. And as you heard from the others, the scope of our projects kept changing through the project, which doesn't help with engagement with landowners. You think you've built rapport, you think you've hit some agreement, and you have to go back a week later and say, actually, we said we're going over here, we actually want to go over here. And after you've done that a few times, they lose all trust in you. Another challenge we had was remembering that just because we're keen to get in and talk to the landowners doesn't mean they're keen to talk to us. They're running businesses, they're living lives, and for us this is our central focus. For them it might be an annoyance they have to deal with. So allowing them enough time to communicate with us. If we send them letters, we get in touch, but not pushing it, not making a point of being that nosy people from the power company that they want to deal with. So remember, we're not their number one priority. Conscious we are about to get kicked out of this room, David. Let's jump to our lessons learned, shall we?
That sounds like a great idea, Warwick. So just quickly from the project team, if you want to go to the next slide, the first thing is just to propose some rule changes to the AEMC so that we can get greater funding initially in the project. That would really help in developing those detailed designs that we need. Developing a detailed RACI for our project group is another key learning that we had. And also just maybe changing up our delivery model from an EPC to a D&C contractor model that we've often used in the past, and that's worked well for us, and then just using experienced contractors. So I'll pass on to Carol for her recommendations.
So I've got some notes here from the team. The first one being implement national design standards. I know it's been talked about for a long time already within the industry, but why are we not doing it? And it's not about sharing the tower design, a specific tower type. It's about sharing templates, assumptions, methodologies, and most importantly, learning. We need to share learnings with each other. Let's not repeat the same mistake other TNSPs made before, and we're just doing the same thing over and over again. So a shared approach means scale faster, fewer errors, and obviously a stronger TNSP across the industry collaboration. Next one. We need to introduce shared digital tools and templates. Right now, there's no consistency. Some people are using BIM, some people are using CAD, And as I said before, some people are still operating Excel. So, I mean, in the face of AI, let's do better. Be more open-minded. Cross-function design coordination with stakeholders. This is a new piece, really. And as what David talked about before, if we can get fundings from AAMC and other regulators, that means we can start concept design earlier. When we do the concept design, we need to get the stakeholders. Some people may ask me, what kind of stakeholders? Suppliers, contractors, our sponsors, making sure, the government people as well, making sure that the design we produce meets the functional requirements, fit for purpose, constructible for the contractors, and also can be built by our suppliers. The very last one, I mentioned a few times already, we need to upskill our designers in the digital engineering space. Thank you.
Okay, would you like to speak quickly?
Like considering the time, I just mentioned one, and the main recommendation I have, please do involve the contractor in the earlier stage planning. We are not that scary. And we need to mitigate the risk along the way rather than leave it for the very last or pass it to the supplier.
Thank you. 3 quick recommendations from supplier. Number 1, early involvement. We need to know the risk, or we can flag we need enough buffer time. And number 2, standardized design. I personally agree with the designers, but on top of that, I'd like to add the major plans added into that standard. Number 3, collective procurement platform built up nationally. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll abbreviate mine given the time then. They mostly boil down to communication and messaging. So being clear with when we're talking to landowners and stakeholders, and avoid sharing uncertain information, which are then going to have to go and change the message down the track. So we don't know, say we don't know, rather than having a guess and stating it as truth.
Well, thank you all for attending our Lessons Learnt workshop. We hope you've got lots out of it, and we will take our recommendations to the board so that they can consider it for future projects.
Alrighty. Big thank you to Gridzilla there. Love the name, by the way. So we're going to open the floor up for questions. If you have a question and you're in the live audience, please put your hand up. If you have a question and you're dialing in online, please add it into the question function. You'll see the link at the bottom of your screen. Now, live audience, who's got a question? One over here.
It's Kai G from Horizon Power. Great branding, love it. My question would be, knowing that all NSPs are governed by the Australian standards, actually why don't NSPs all have a combined design and plant standard?
I'll answer this one. I can only comment from my own experience, yeah? So we do have Australian standards, but individual TNSPs or NSPs, DNSPs do have their own specifications. And we tend, as technical people, we tend to focus very much on detail. We focus on what our differences are instead of our commonalities. I think it does require a culture change, a mind shift, and our embrace of change. But change do make us uncomfortable, but it also promotes growth.
Manju from Endeavour Energy. Will I be right if I say, so somebody suggested that the drawings are coming midway construction, like design drawings. Would you say it's because of the rush during the design time? Do you have any suggestions? Because I feel that we are rushing through the design time, and all the stakeholders are rushed through. They didn't take enough time to review the drawings, and the comments come.
say not to blame the designer because it wasn't the designer's fault in this particular hypothetical. The way the funding model works, it's very difficult to get enough money up front to do a full detailed design and therefore have a full detailed scope before you start the project. So you're taking a best guess, asking for some money, and when you're doing a $2 or $3 or $4 billion project, a 5% mistake is a very large amount of money. So the designers, they did a good job with what they were given, but they weren't given enough. Hence, the changes.
A little bit more. I guess it's a lot of this stem from lack of planning up front, and that's prior to design, even prior to when we get a project, right? So it's actually, as people mentioned before, about have a national approach, even with the land, even the social licensing. So when we have a framework that's already set up, which is like pre-planning in the above the NSPs even, if that's been done, that means that the downstream work, which done by us, it's more coordinated, if that makes sense. So I would say this is something I heard from a good PM years ago. We fail to plan, we plan to fail. Yeah.
Okay, we got time for one last question.
Great presentation, guys, and good work. Quick question to Carol. Coming from sub-design, we do have a graduate program, like 6 months program in EQL. It's really hard to attract a young generation professionals in sub-design. Sometimes they feel it's very demanding and very challenging. It's not interesting. So how do we attract young generation into sub-design? Thank you.
Now that's a really hard question. It's a good one. I think we need to embrace changes, yeah? And we can see the younger generation probably have different focuses and probably different interests as well. And we need to move with the time and keep us contemporary. One thing I've learned from API is the work done by, I can't never remember, our market lady here. Sorry, I can't remember her name. Esther, sorry, Esther, I had a mind blank. I think she's updating the Instagrams and updating the LinkedIn every day. I think because it's more, I think the younger generation is really into the social media. So as older, professionals, we need to learn from the young ones. We need to be able to talk to them in their language. Not all the time, but that'd be really cringeworthy. But at least we want to understand each other, right? Yeah.
Awesome. All right, can I get a big round of applause? And whilst Asta's at the front, big round of applause for Asta as well. Lovely. We'll be moving on to our next speaker in just a moment.
Hello again, everyone. While we're swapping out our speakers, next group up, I just... Ready to go.
Thank you, David. Good morning, everyone. We are Group 2, and our topic is enhancing trust, transparency, and engagement with digitalization. I'll just quickly introduce our group. We have Wyatt from Endeavour Energy, Hadi from City Power Powerco United Energy, Laren from Energy Queensland, Kieran from Electronet, and myself, Renuka from AEMO. So today we're going to start, I will start with unpacking our challenge question, and then we'll move to the current state of play. We'll get some key insights from what we've learned in these last 2 weeks, and recommendations for action and professional development to follow. So, what was our challenge? It is how can digital technology enhance trust, transparency, and engagement in integrating customer-owned energy assets into the power grid. In order to unpack the question a little more, we tried to identify what is the key outcome that is required from us, the key stakeholders that will be impacted by this, and the criteria that we need to use in order to reach the outcome. So what we have unpacked is digital technology to be used to enhance trust, transparency, and engagement being our outcome. We also need to keep the customer, that is every energy user, in mind, and use that to build on our work together. So the obvious keywords that that come to our mind when we see this challenge question is trust, transparency, and engagement. If you think about it, they kind of have a circular relationship. You cannot achieve one if you leave the other two behind. But I also want to highlight some of the other two keywords that we think were intentionally added to the challenge question, and that is digital technology and power grid. So our proposed solution, we should be able to take into account the advancements that we've made in digital technology, like AI, gamification, and learn from other industries that use this on a daily basis and have received success, but haven't been used in the energy industry as much before. And power grid also being there, it's like the proposed solution should be able to give us a way such that the energy industry is able, and the grid is being able to be operated as a secure power system, and in the end we have consensus on how we operate the grid. Okay, so how do you think a consumer feels when someone tells them that another entity wants to have controllability of their consumer assets? You get that kind of an image in your mind, right? Like, it's scary. Why does someone else want to have control of what I have spent money on and I have installed in my house? But we want to move away from that thinking and move to a more trusted bi-directional relationship where we are all working together to come to a common conclusion. I'll hand over to Kiran.
Might use this, if that's all right. So before we sort of jump into understanding the state of play, I wanted to get a bit of engagement from the audience, as we're all consumers. So can I see of hands for who owns a smartphone? All right, arms are working, no liars, that's good. And who has used AI today or in the past couple of days? So there's definitely an avenue there to capitalise on this for our industry. To understand where we're going, we need to understand where we are and where we've been. So you've heard it through a lot of presentations today, like as an industry, we've got the increasing DR penetration, we've got the rollout of smart meters across multiple states and territories. There's pilot projects and emerging business models now. There's grid modernisation efforts. We've had some really good presentations on those, as well as we're going through regulatory evolution as well. Like, I know that's a really hot topic at the moment. How can we change things to move forwards? So, a bit of a journey through time. If you look back 5 years, it's been really sort of interesting to sort of go how far we've come. And when we look forwards, there's still a lot to do. We heard a quote from a presenter that was a Bill Gates quote. We overestimate what we'll achieve in the next 2 years, but we underestimate what we'll achieve in the next 10 years. So that sort of resonated with me a little bit, and sort of looking at how far we've come and then what we're still planning that we're trying to achieve. So, you know, we've had an increase in the DERs, emergence of VPPs, a massive swing in consumer awareness, and, you know, elephant in the room, like, as an industry, we're not doing that great from a trust perspective at the moment. They gave us a presentation yesterday or the day before that identified that consumers trust banks more than the electricity industry. So that sort of resonated with me a little bit, and went, something probably should change there. Looking forwards, you know, we're going at a rate of knots with respect to digitisation and the advanced energy trading platforms. We're going to mature in the VPP markets. You know, we've got to address workforce availability. And there's so many things as an industry that we can work through to try and achieve that outcome. So, key trends, like what can we see, where have we been, where are we going, what sort of stands out? And to me, you know, digitisation is a big thing. Like where we all have it, it's crept into our lives, whether we want it or not, like it's part of the future. There's been a proliferation of customer energy resources. There's a bunch of challenges, and what that sort of leads to is customer or consumer relationship becoming one of the most critical things that we have as an industry moving forwards. So, noting all of that, I'm going to pass over on to Hattie.
So I'm going to go through some of the key insights. I'll go through our industrial challenges, and then I'm going to go through our existing strategy, and then I'll go through the gaps, risks and opportunities. The grid is changing with the introduction of solar, batteries, EVs, and customers can now be part of the energy solution. But I guess the challenge is we want to empower them, not make them feel overwhelmed. So with all of that change, customers are feeling overwhelmed with all of the information that's being thrown at them. They don't know how the networks work, how the whole system operates top down. And I think we're not doing it justice in terms of educating them, whether it's through socials or whatever else. That, coupled with the cost of living, is making things harder because nobody cares about their solar when they can't put food on the table. And it's driving resistance to change. So our existing strategy is modernising the grid through investing in smart grids at a consumer level and an industrial level. There's feed-in tariffs, rooftop solar programs, there's incentives to buy EVs, but it's very fragmented. And that's kind of decentralising the electricity. That's what we're doing. The smart meter rollout, on the other hand, in some states, centralised the data in non-contestable meters. And in some states, we have non-contestable meters. So that shows that we haven't got a unified approach to how we do things across the whole network across Australia. And when we want to run demand response programs, some states do it better than others. So in Victoria, we're lucky because we have a non-contestable meter, which means the data is all centralised and we get all the insights we need. But then in other states, that's not the case. So then you can't run those programs. I think the key message there is we're pushing the electrons out so that they can come from cars, from your solar panels, from your batteries, but we need to get the data into one point so that we can make the decisions necessary to get to manage the system in the way that we want to. There are pilot projects out there and research initiatives, ad hoc, so I can speak of some, but maybe non-related to DER, but then my colleagues can speak of some that are. The gaps, so there's a lack of standardisation and interoperability, and a good example of that is in BESS systems we run the 2030 protocol, but into our SCADA we run DMP. And so if you ask some control rooms, they don't want to know about 2030, and if you ask other control rooms, they want it in the control room. So I think then we need some sort of standardisation there. Insufficient grid infrastructure investment. So we've got governments pushing solar and battery into houses. We've got Tesla putting large-scale batteries out into Victoria and South Australia and other places, and there are other privatised investment that's going on, but it's ad hoc again. So the risks that introduces are, one of the ones that I've come across is cybersecurity. And I can give you an example of that where you have SCADA going into your control room controlling a critical infrastructure, and you have an industrial BESS which is well controlled, and then you have your home air conditioner which connects to your Wi-Fi. So what you're doing is you're overlapping your critical infrastructure with your household Wi-Fi, and you're getting grey and blurry lines between the two. So that's a huge risk. Equity concerns. So another example there is the feed-in tariffs, where once upon a time they used to be good for the household, but now they're pretty average. And our challenge is to get consumers on board. So I think there is an opportunity there to be a bit more equitable. Another opportunity is to build grid resilience. If we do this properly, we'll get grid resilience across the board, whether we have a major natural event or a non-natural event. If we do this properly, we'll have a better network in the future. And I think customer empowerment, that's the real opportunity here. If we get proper engagement and be equitable, we'll get the customers on board, which are critical to achieving what we all want to achieve. So I'm going to pass on to Laren now. Thank you. Let me change slide.
How's everyone going? Is everyone feeling happy? Everyone feeling awake? It's okay, I can fix that. So remember to vote for us. So I've got 3 different points that I'm going to talk about, which is levelling the playing field, leveraging social media, and exploring gamification. Yes, please. So basically, in terms of the business models we're hoping to present, the types of things people are exploring and doing well, and what our industry has to do is explore firstly the self-consumption. So that's the standard where you lower your bills by just having consumer energy resources on site, no control. So moving those, virtual power plants are the next things to explore. So that will allow people to not only lower their bills, but also take advantage of markets such as FCAS, so frequency control stability, ancillary services. But that requires investment in things like software, but we can enable the revenue from these things to be shared more fairly. Peer-to-peer trading is another model which we'd like to enable. So if you have access to excess energy, you'll be able to trade that with your neighbours. So to enable that, things like blockchain are required, as well as smart meters. So we're starting to be able to enable those technologies now. The community energy type batteries, that kind of thing, it's starting to be enabled in different organisations, so they can basically lower council bills, basically. So next slide. So leveraging social media is the next one. So I think everyone uses social media, but for the sake of time, I'll say the people who are doing it well use it for customer support and being able to take the social media, take their company into the houses of people. They share informative content, so there's education and that kind of thing. There's explainers and videos, like the retailers such as AGL have programs to say, how does my daily charge work? So they're pushing education into people's homes. Things like football sponsorship and just having people with the, celebrities and whatnot on the internet talking about products. It gets that halo effect of, making your brand better and more trusted. And also outage notification. So my last slide is on exploring gamification. On it. So QUT has been researching things like points, badges, and how that works to change customer behaviour. The other one would be tiered rewards and social competition. I'll probably leave it there because we've got one more speaker, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauren. Where are we going? As Lauren mentioned, there are actually quite a lot of key actions we need to do as an industry. And in order to do that, we all have to participate and gear ourselves up on how we're going to set the system up, set the process up, from AMO, and everyone within the organization and the states and Australia, how we can contribute to this exciting future. In terms of professional development, there's a few initiatives I identified. And first of all, of course, as engineer of course, point out there's a lot of technical skills and certification that we can develop ourselves. This rapidly evolving area, I can't tell you what is to learn. That is like something like how do you talk in a football game to attract people to learn about energy industry. That's yeah, getting points for saving energy. That's something we have to learn how to communicate with the new customer that we're facing. Some of the things that they also mentioned using the phone. We have also used phone. One of the things we identified being critical, how we can make use of different platforms to engage the customer and communicate what we trying to communicate, and using AI, like what we mentioned, to better provide transparency on decision as well as making the decision quicker. And one thing we engineers tend to be less focused on. So thank you. I'll just quickly go through, but we have to develop a lot of soft skills in order to engage customers, as well as how we work together as a team to develop our future. Some of the research and industrial workshop and consultation we have already gone through in the previous seminar. This Race for 2030, and I give a plug for Endeavour's Flexible Export. And how do we also think about contributing to regulatory and ethical governance developments? Are we being fair or are we being objective? And we really have to take the lead on create our future. This is the first step on being uncomfortable being on the stage. I might also do one last thing, like same as what Stephanie tried to do. Are we able to do? Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Round of applause. All right, we're going to open it up for questions. Pop your hand up. Yep.
Thank you, team. That's great. Quick question with regards to peer-to-peer trading. Laren, I think it was your statement earlier on in a slide. Do you see with the peer-to-peer trading, especially with CRs coming into the grid, we may need a different flexible marketplace to manage peer-to-peer trading?
That's a great question, thank you. So I believe the parts of the industry we need to change is firstly the regulatory framework in the connection space, and then you need the technology to enable it within the distribution network providers. So you'll need portals. Following that, you'll need OEM providers to be able to provide the technology to enable those trades. So once you have all those things, you'll be able to start that actual market, and you'll need the software platforms to be able to get people to engage in, to basically start trading in that market. Thank you.
Thank you. Question over here.
Hi, Cassandra Ellis from SA Power Networks. Just in response, in question to the consumer information overload, and you mentioned the we, but obviously this power sector is really large and there is the segment of retailers that's a big part of this. Do you think there is a certain portion of the sector that should take responsibility for informing customers and making sure they understand this complex environment?
This is just my opinion. I think everybody needs to take responsibility because the network itself is complex vertically and horizontally. So whether that's government, whether that's the regulators, I think the regulators have a bigger part to play here, which they're not. Governments change all the time. We're lucky at the moment we're getting some consistency. But yeah, so I would say, in my opinion, start with the regulators, push back on the governments, take responsibility and accountability, and then tell the TNSPs and DNSPs, or bring them to the party. That's my answer.
Is there one last quick question? All good? Well, give the team a big round of applause. Thank you very much, guys.
Hi everyone. Just before we start our presentation, I thought I'd better give everyone a quick warning. We may be having some sudden changes in lighting and sound levels during our presentation. It could be triggering to some people that have certain medical conditions. If this is a concern for you, I unfortunately do recommend that it may be best to leave the room for our presentation. Good to go? Good morning, everyone. We are Group 1, and we are answering the challenge question, who has been set by Renee Anderson: how can the power sector support and strengthen community resilience in response to prolonged power outages caused by extreme weather events? If we break that up, some of the key elements of this that we're trying to explore: number one, how can we shape the DNSP, in case you're wondering, the network provider, and stakeholder actions to ensure the following? One, DNSPs are supported to invest in network resilience. And number two, the really big one we're going to be looking at, is customers are more prepared to withstand increasing power outages as a result of weather events. I'd love to introduce our team. We're very lucky. We've got the best in the industry here today. I can assure you there have been many all-nighters to get the job done. Number one, we have Adam. We have Cameron, and we have Shioni.
Dr. Shioni.
Oh, sorry, Doctor. Right, we are going to start with an acknowledgement of country. Today we are actually at Mangrove Mountain in the central coast of New South Wales. The traditional owners are the Darkinjung people, who have been the traditional custodians of the land for the last 40,000 years. They are people that have connected with both the land and the surrounding waters, where they still take part in traditional activities such as fishing. We extend our respect to elders past and present, and the respect to all Indigenous people that may be here today. So welcome to Mangrove Mountain. We're excited to be here. Yeah, we're pretty excited to be here, aren't we? It is a small town, 715 people. But what's interesting is there are a lot of small towns in Australia. There are over 3,200 towns that have less than 5,000 people living there. Like those other towns, there are certain challenges. You do have an ageing population. The average age in Mangrove Mountain is 43 compared to the national average of 38. That can have additional medical vulnerabilities attached to that as well, and being in a geographically isolated place makes it harder to get to the facilities that you need. So, I'm actually from Newcastle, and if anyone's been watching the news over the last couple of days, you may see that there has been a really significant weather update and flood that's been hitting. I personally have families up in Taree as well who have been affected by those floods, and that area extends down to the central coast as well. So you've all been watching essentially we don't have sound. Apologies. Imagining that there is the sound of significant rain rolling over us all. We have a lot of rain, we have a lot of lightning, and bang, lightning. Oh no! Please, we've had a power outage, everyone. Can I ask you all to remain seated? Don't worry, I've got a torch. Can you see me? Okay, it's a bit like a campfire, isn't it? This is kind of nice. And I'm glad you're all comfortable, because we could be here a while. We might even be like this for up to a week. And the reason for that is that, ultimately, while the network providers are trying to clean up the networks, they're cutting away loose, dangerous wires, that first of all needs to be the priority. And probably one of the biggest frustrations in all of this for the poor network providers as well, and for the people, is the clouds are going to part in 2 hours. You're going to have this beautiful blue sky, you're going to start to hear the birds sing, and you know what? The power's still going to be out, and it's going to be out for another week. And it's going to get pretty boring with the power out. And the worst thing is that as people start getting frustrated at wondering why their power is still out, the news articles begin as well. And we're continuing to try and deal with the network outages that we've got. We're trying to get people back online. And you know what? People are starting to get really annoyed. And that's a really tough position to be in. The good news, however, is that we are actually in Victoria. The lights are on. But as you can see, there are additional challenges that do come with living in these rural areas. I'm actually going to pass over to Adam that can go into a few more of those pain points that we're facing.
All right, so we're talking about widespread outages, right? So we're obviously going to talk about climate change. And a lot of the DNSPs, if not all, are doing modelling around what the increased impacts might be from the different perils of flood, cyclone, bushfire and so forth. And the information that I've seen at least, that varies based on the region and the type of sort of crisis we're talking about, from like 5 to 20% over the next 30 years, right? Which is fairly significant. But there's a saying which is that all models are wrong, some models are useful, right? So we'll see how that pans out. Personally, I'm from Western Australia, so we're seeing some heat waves at the moment that are beating the RCP 4.5 scenario at the moment, so I'm feeling it at least. So, but I tell you what, it doesn't take much to be able to put a prompt to ChatGPT and ask for recent events and get a bit of a timeline, and so there's quite a few to choose from. So it's quite surprising just how many widespread outages we're having, especially from a national level. And we're talking about prolonged outages, and we're sort of defining that as like 5 days and above, right? Certainly surprised me just how often widespread outages with 5 days or more, like sometimes far longer restoration times actually occur. And as you can see, they come from all sorts of events, right? So this is an issue that we're already seeing, and it's been going on for a while. So what does that mean for customers? So like we're all electricity consumers ourselves, so we know what a power outage is like, right? So power goes out, you lose internet, lighting, you might start worrying about your food or so forth. But when you start getting down the other end of the scale and you start talking about 5 days, you're talking about communications breakdowns, you're talking about, you might have water supply issues, there might be food issues. And if you're if you're talking long outages, we're talking about, or long restoration of an outage, we're talking about regional communities where they're already isolated to begin with, right? So these impacts are really compounded. Now, on top of that, we've got increasing electrification of customers as well, right? So people are buying electric vehicles, they're switching to electric water heaters and electric cooking. So the impact of outages is going to be greater as well, right? So this is like a growing issue in the future. So, okay.
Alrighty, just wanted to touch on, I guess, a little bit how the DNSPs respond to these kind of things. So as you can see here, a few natural disasters, storms, fires and floods, often leads to widespread damage across the network. And with the increasing frequency and severity of these, customers are getting exposed to more and more prolonged outages. With that said, the DNSPs are really good at getting their boots on the ground to restore power to those customers who have lost supply. But there's a fair bit more that can be done to harden the networks to reduce the impact and or duration of these outages to customers. So I'll just touch on a couple of rules and reg changes that have happened recently to provide a bit of guidance on that. So recently the AER released a value of network resilience and that framework was released in September. So it's not perfect, but it does offer an additional benefit stream DNSPs can use to justify resilience projects. The VNR, for people who don't know, was essentially just a multiplier on the existing VCR, which is value of customer reliability, but it does have diminishing returns for outages longer than 3 days. The other thing that's happened early this month, which should help provide a bit of clarity moving forward, is a new rule change by the AEMC. So this rule is to allow DNSPs to incorporate resilience as part of their upcoming EDPR proposals. So the main changes were that, in particular, Victorian DBs, as part of this reg reset period, the 2026 to 2031, they can include these projects and the AER has to consider them. In addition to that, the AER must create a a network resilience guide by December 2026, and that should outline sort of the criteria and approval process for these types of projects, but that's not out yet. So people in Victoria sort of have to front run that and see how it goes, and note that Ausgrid also had some funding requested as part of this and only got about 30% of what they wanted. So we'll see how that plays out. And then the additional part of that is increased reporting that will happen. So from 2028 onwards, all DNSPs will be required to highlight climate-related risks to their network, resilient investments that are planned or made, and consumer experience during these events. So with all that said, there's plenty of things that can be done to harden the network from a DNSP standpoint. So whether it's replacing wooden poles in bushfire areas, upgrading or changing your design standards to assist with storm response, or upgrading equipment to help with heat waves, there's a fair bit that can be done. But unfortunately, that all takes time, that all takes money. It doesn't help us in the interim. So for the main part of what we've done, we've looked at focusing on community resilience in addition to these network options, which we're all probably pretty aware of anyway. So I'll throw over to Shani to talk about those now.
Thanks, Cameron. So long-term resilience planning is already underway with NSPs collaborating with the regulatory bodies, AER, asking for more funding, and I should change my slide first. All right. However, as Cameron mentioned, these are long-term. They would take time. And what we are here today is to focus on some short and medium-term actions that DNSPs and other parties can take in the face of extreme weather events. So just to be sure, DNSPs are still the primary authority for network operations, outage restoration, infrastructure recovery. But resilience is not a solo effort, and other parties must share responsibilities across the preparedness and response lifecycle. So before an extreme event, DNSPs should work closely together with local and state government agencies, media, and community leaders to communicate risk, expected disruptions, and preparedness steps to reach to the public and through more awareness campaigns, including life support. State emergency services and frontline emergency officers should work with DNSPs to coordinate drills and response plans, and make everyone aware really what are the clear contact points when the event happens. Ensure that key assets like communication towers, transport, have viable backup power options. So it really frustrates people to have multiple system failures. So one is I have no power, another thing is my phone is not working, I can't reach anywhere because transport is not working. Now some partnerships and processes are already working great and they have been colored as green. Others require more cross-agency training, so all parties need to come together effectively, and they have been colored yellow just to identify hotspots on where we should put in more energy while building community resilience. All right, don't worry, we are not going to put you through another VR experience. However, the weather event has happened, and power is down. So who is doing what after the event has happened? DNSP field crews, they are on the ground doing best what they do. They're restoring and repairing damaged networks. And they are really efficient, they're well trained, and they act really fast, and that's why they've been colored green. They are also helping customers for life support equipment. Although they have been trained just in case emergency happens, they're also happy to provide that help. But the DNSP liaison team is the strategic connector here. They are coordinating closely with the field crews to get real-time update of the expected restoration time and acting as the central point of contact with the team that has already been trained before the event has happened. And all these people are providing consistent real-time update to the customers because guess what? Just being aware makes a lot of things easier sometimes. They are also supporting the Community Resilience Hub and directing people to places where they can find power, charge their mobile phones, take a shower, and educating people generally. And critical infrastructure, although they have been trained before, just in case they require help, DNSPs can still get in touch with them and help. So, summarize, this is not a DNSP's solo responsibility. And guess what? We also have great examples. We have great examples where the New South Wales Bushfire Services, they did a great job in preparing the customers for the bushfires. And we can work with them. We can work with them because they already have the experience and the experience to deal with this kind of public. And now I will just give it to Gabby to summarize our recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shioni. I'm going to summarise with our key recommendations for today. I think probably the first and foremost is that new funding for DNSPs to build network resilience is excellent. However, this is going to take quite a long time to properly implement, so we do need to keep thinking about community awareness and engagement in the imminent stage. The other thing to note with all of this is that DNSPs post-event are very, very busy. They are out there actually boots on the ground fixing all of the problems in our network. So how can we tap into those other emergency response vehicles that are dealing with people on the ground, and how do we make sure that that is consistent? That is what we need to do before the event occurs. There's a couple of the main ones. We're also talking about backup supplies for critical infrastructure so we don't have those flow-on effects. And the other one we really want to have a bit of a look at here is community hubs. You know, this is where you have, thank you. This is essentially where you have, essentially a backup power source available at another location. A little post-event for Mangrove Mountain, and we will be done in less than 1 minute, I promise.
No, you are...
I'm done.
Done.
Okay. Red card. Thank you.
Well done, but we were very clear. No one gets extra time.
So this question is, you talk about the replacement of assets. How do you plan to manage these asset replacements within the bounds of annual budgets?
That is definitely a good question. So it's not about necessarily proactively replacing them unless there's a direct need. It's when they come end of life, just looking at smarter ways to do it. So replace a wood pole with concrete or composite or something that's not flammable. When you do replacement of a crossarm, increase the spacing, or increase your veg clearance. So it's not doing it all now, but it's doing it smarter in the future.
Thank you.
Hi, Holly from AMO. I just have a question about where you think the weather industry fits into all this. I noticed Cyclone Alfred wasn't on the list of events that you had listed, and it seems like an example of something which was actually quite well forecast and communicated by the weather industry of what was going to happen in advance.
So as part of this, there's a pre-preparedness stage. One sort of sensitivity I think with DNSPs is we do have a fairly good understanding of which customers are most exposed, but that's quite a contentious issue. So telling customers you're on a particularly vulnerable network and there's some events coming through, or just generally like you should be sort of more prepared than the average person, that's quite a sticky conversation, right? Because the immediate response is, well, what are you doing to improve my network? And the answer to that in the short term is this is going to take a very long time to boost and improve, especially through replacement programs, and just because the asset bases are so big. So I think in context of your question, for a big event where it's really well forecast, it's really about warning people like what they can do to prepare, the same way is sort of done with bushfire preparedness. But also potentially like reaching out to customers who we know are probably more exposed. So.
Can I also add to that? Just to have a bit of a personal experience, I did chat to someone who was affected by Alfred. And although it seems like it has been managed really well, but he told me he was really frustrated because it was a 5 days outage, and he was mostly frustrated with this multiple failure of different systems, like communication tower. His phone wasn't working, he couldn't get anywhere to get food, refrigerator was not working. Having said all of that, although it just seems like from the media that a lot has been done and a lot has been done, there's still a lot to do, and all of us have to come together to make this coordinated solution. Yep.
We actually have an online question sort of relating to this. Emergency services are already stressed at these times. Do you have details on how the liaison with first responders will be undertaken with no further stress?
And you have 1 minute.
I can speak to that because City Power Coconut Energy does that a little bit. We have a mobile response vehicle which can go out and support those people. So they will go out and support SES. They offer news services, cup of coffee, and just to keep them engaged, because they're on the front line understanding that absolutely they're doing work, but they also want to know what's being done in the background. They're quite stressed, but they want that visibility. So that's been really successful.
I also think it's just about empowering the teams with current information, so when they are asked the questions, SES have the answers as well.
Was there a question down the front here on the other side?
No, we're out of time.
Out of time.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Well done.
Okay. So yeah, we are the last one standing between you and lunch, so we will try and get off as quickly as we can. Okay, so my name's Peter Scholes. I'm from SA Power Networks, and I'm going to try and provide you an overview of the challenge problem statement. Tom Rees from Energy Queensland, he will look at explaining and simplifying the topics. Corey Chin from PowerCore will look at the key challenges and provide us with some examples. Sadie Moorshed from AEMO will highlight stakeholders and strategies. And Sam Stevenson, also from AEMO, will look at what can be done in the professional development space. So the energy transformation, it is a once in a generational change. It's not seen since the inception of the grid, which began in the early 1900s. It's a socially significant event. It'll impact the fundamental way that each and every one of us will access energy now and into the future. It is also technically complex. We know where we want to go, but we don't know exactly how we want to get there, as the technology hasn't been implemented yet. And the policy is politically charged subject. Quite often politicians and political parties use the uncertainty for their short-term gains. So the energy transformation, it's a journey. The existing grid took 60 years to build to where it is today. We're looking to transform that within the next 20 years. As a result of that, all facets of society, including the general public at large, all industry sectors, policymakers and investors who are critical to fund the projects to get us there, it will impact all of them. There are significant risks if we do get it wrong. Recent highlights are the 2016 South Australia blackout, which was reported to be as a result of network issues, and the even more recent 2025 Spain and Portugal blackout, the cause of which is yet to be determined. So the challenge, as previously mentioned, the journey is long, the issues are complex. As a result, communication is critical. Quite often it is explained in specialist technical terms which few understand, and as a result it is difficult to get everyone to drive in a common direction. As a result of that, is fragmented public and industry engagement, and that leads to a lack of policy consistency necessary to drive long-term investment. So this leads us to the problem statement as put to us by Danny Alexander, Chief Executive, University of New South Wales Energy Institute, and that is, what strategies can be used to translate complex technical reform priorities into compelling narratives that sustain bipartisan support and long-term investment. Tom is going to explain and simplify the topic for us.
So using metaphors is a great way of simplifying a topic. As an example, we have used the juxtaposition of an old world and new world metaphor to create a narrative and emotional response to the problem at hand. This aids in providing direction for technical reform and to help bring everyone along on the journey. The traditional energy grid can be likened to an ancient fortress, imposing and formidable in its time, constructed with towering walls and singular entry points to control the flow of resources. Within its confines, various factions operated in isolation, each guarding their own domain, seldom communicating with others. The fortress relied on a central hearth, burning vast quantities of carbon-emitting fuels to provide warmth and light. Decisions were made reactively addressing immediate threats without a cohesive strategy for the future. As the world outside evolved, emphasizing sustainability and interconnectedness, the fortress's rigid structure and insular operations rendered it ill-equipped to adapt and change, highlighting the need for transformation into a more open and collaborative system. The New World energy system resembles a thriving rainforest ecosystem, diverse, interconnected, and resilient. In this environment, various renewable energy sources like solar, wind, and hydro function as the flora, each contributing uniquely to the ecosystem's vitality. Stakeholders ranging from policymakers and industry leaders to local communities act as the fauna, interacting symbiotically with the energy sources and each other. Clear and simplified communication channels serve as the nutrient-rich rivers, ensuring that information flows seamlessly, nourishing every part of the system. This collaborative and transparent network fosters an adaptive and sustainable energy landscape, capable of evolving and changing environmental and societal needs. In summary, the transition from the old world to the new world involves moving from a fragmented, incremental change to a cohesive step change strategy that prioritizes sustainability, stakeholder engagement, and the simplification of technical language. This metaphor highlights the necessary shifts in mindset required to successfully navigate the complexities of modern energy reforms to ensure a secure, sustainable energy future. And next, Corey is going to take us through the 2 examples of technical reform that are impacting the industry right now.
Thanks, Tom. I think I certainly look forward to that wonderful rainforest. So the first example I'm going to go through is one that has large impacts on our energy transition. We've got a classic renewable economy headline. AEMO was slashing outputs of solar farms, and below is what the oscillations are seen in the area. In this case, system strength issues have been distilled down to voltage issues. What has happened here is a failure to effectively communicate the issue, which has caused misinformation and fear-based narratives to dominate developer discourse around PSCAD. And to be honest, I don't know any developer that isn't afraid of PSCAD. This, in turn, has caused reduction in long-term investment and in renewable generating systems and network projects in the area. Further, there is uncertainty in costs for system strength remediation, or you end up paying a system strength charge. And system strength charges are very expensive right now. What we need to be doing is building coherent, compelling narratives that will enable developers to understand and engage. And with system strength issues, this will encourage long-term investment, and then will build trust and policy stability across investment groups and political groups. The next challenge I want to go through is called minimum system load, which is an issue facing AEMO and DNSPs right now. So what we're showing here on the graph on the left is the minimum demand in Victoria. And so we can see the trigger limit there is the red dotted line. And so essentially, once we hit that trigger limit, what happens is DNSPs are curtailing PV or energy storage export from customers, from you. So to me, this really begins to sound like a future political firestorm. The reason for that is, do you really want big bad networks controlling your energy storage systems or your solar on your roof? It doesn't really make sense to me. So from there, we can see that we are facing risks of oversimplification with this issue, and we may end up overpromising that we won't curtail customers, but we may end up curtailing you all the time. And this may then cause problems for our credibility in the industry to explain these narratives. So it really becomes a challenge of how do we explain these narratives and make them engaging for everyday Australians. No one really wants to listen to what we want to say. So next society is going to work through some of these questions by taking you through the stakeholders that are important and how to build strategies for them.
Thank you, Corey, for sharing the issues and the challenges we are facing in the grid. So this part of the presentation will be dealing with the key stakeholders that are involved not only in creation of strategies, but also get impacted by them. So out of the wide range of stakeholders, condensing them into two main categories. The first category deals with the strategy influencers or the decision makers. So these involve the government and regulatory bodies, which establish legal frameworks, policies and regulations, setting targets, creating incentives, and ensuring fair market practices. Along with them are the energy market participants, including all the generators, transmission and distribution network providers, going through the retailers. So the second group is the business impact absorbers. So these include the landowners, communities, local residents, small businesses and households, investors in energy sector, and manufacturers. So it's really important that the efficient strategies are there for all these stakeholders to have clear narratives so that they can have bipartisan support and long-term investment plans. So going through this, it's really important to understand the stakeholders, understanding their motivations, their aspirations, how they are perceiving our projects and the initiatives, and this can be done by efficient means of communication. So it will be helpful if we have multiple communication channels specifically tailored according to stakeholders' preferences, and also listening and getting feedback from them. Along with this, collaborative approach in letting the consumers and the stakeholders know the problems which we are facing in the technical jargon is also very important. For example, the minimum system load issue, so and the solution we have, the backstop, solar backstop. So it's really important for the consumers to understand what technical challenges we are facing on the grid side, so that they can more understand about the solutions we are having to manage this problem. Along with this, the ongoing involvement, which can have periodic sessions to update about the progress so that they feel more connected. So the recommended strategies to develop clear narratives include building trust and transparent decision making. So this can be helpful by clear guidelines and technical reforms, which will boost investor confidence for long-term plans. Along with this, the legislative measures to support technical innovations while safeguarding consumer interests are also of paramount importance. The visual aids like charts, graphs make the complex informations more easy to digest. Along with storytelling, structuring the narratives logically, and using analogies is also a very good approach. Engaging and building support to the communities, getting the feedback from them, regular town hall meetings to address their issues, and knowing them a simplified real world strategies and problems, case studies, this is also very helpful in this regard. And the most important is the proactive approach to develop an emergent workforce is really necessary for efficient transition to future industry. Equipping the new workforce with effective communication tools so that they are able to translate complex issues, get aware of the stakeholder needs, and influence change. So our next presenter, Sam, will be talking more about the professional development and opportunities in this space. So to Sam.
Thank you, Sadia. So as professionals in the power industry, we understand that technical excellence alone doesn't drive transformation. Our engineers are tackling some of the most complex challenges our industry has faced to date. But unless they can effectively articulate clearly these challenges and their solutions, opportunities for impactful change may be lost. That's why we believe that our university engineering curriculum needs to evolve. We need to develop not just technically capable graduates, but strategic communicators. Engineers who can translate complexity into clarity and data into direction. Senior leaders don't need to grasp every algorithm or every model. What they need is insight, delivered with credibility, foresight, and purpose. That means teaching engineers how to craft compelling narratives, how to map stakeholders, and build trust dividends, both in industry and in our communities. It also means helping students frame technical issues in ways that inspire bipartisan support, shape policy change, and ultimately give confidence to long-term investment to deliver the projects which are critical to enabling this once-in-a-generation energy transition. By embedding the principles of effective communication, compelling storytelling, and stakeholder engagement into the foundation of our engineering education, we're not just producing better communicators, we're cultivating future leaders. Leaders who can build partnerships with universities and industry, ensuring that research is not only rigorous, but also understood, grounded in practical application, and industry relevant and actionable. By empowering our generation or next generation of engineers to speak the language of influence, to inspire innovation, and to lead the energy transition with both technical depth and strategic insight, we enable them to translate complex technical reforms into compelling narratives that sustain bipartisan support and long-term investment. So in closing, to unlock long-term investment and policy certainty, we must secure bipartisan support and speak a language that resonates beyond the technical. By empowering and developing our workforce at all levels to translate complexity into compelling strategy, we don't just build infrastructure, we build trust, momentum, and a future-ready energy system. So now I'll open up for questions, or
Wonderful job. All right, who has a question for our panel, our speakers?
I think in university, and we've learnt a lot this week, so a number of what I've kind of pulled from other sessions that we've had about building a compelling narrative, how to understand and map our stakeholders. So I think just some of those topics that we've covered, we could absolutely include in our universities. And then for our current workforce, I think it's kind of through mentorship and leadership. I think effective communication is something that I'm really passionate of. I'm not super technical, so I like to really kind of work with my team and work with my peers on how we can communicate to someone like me that isn't an electrical engineer. So I think both in university we can expand our curriculum, and in the workforce we can help each other to better communicate to our stakeholders, being our leadership. I think just one thing that I've kind of noticed in my career is that I've seen some incredibly brilliant engineers that are technically, very, very switched on. And at a working level, I've seen that they add so much value, they have so many incredible ideas, and then they go to communicate that upwards and they just fall apart. And I think that's a real shame, and it's a missed opportunity for some of that knowledge to be shared. So I think, kind of recognising and celebrating those successes, because I think it's easy to say that leaders and senior management and those who are directly engaging with our policymakers need to have leadership skills. But our engineers, they just do the work. But it's kind of Chinese whispers, right? Like if you're not communicating bottom up, then we're not getting the full picture.
Just a quick comment from online, not a question. They said, well done. As engineers, we are best placed to understand the complexity and needs. That makes us the best to communicate the answers to decision makers. So well done. Gabby's got a question.
Hello. First off, awesome presentation. And you know what I see as a very, very challenging question to answer as well. So you've nailed it. Is there anything going through this process and answering the question that particularly challenged your existing assumptions about the question or subject matter or really surprised you?
Great question, Gabby. So I think for us, we really struggled with what stakeholder is important. So you can imagine you start with, the public's most important, right? Because the public's what informs bipartisan support, right? But then you go to, well, the public doesn't really care, right? They just want to make sure their power's on, right? So then you go, maybe the politicians are important. And then you go, well, the politicians are just there to win votes. They don't really care either. So then how do we actually influence everyone? And the people that care the most are probably industry. And then our industry leaders we see as the ones that really can communicate. So that's kind of was the challenge for us.
All right, one last question. Who's got a question? Great, one from Peter. And I'm going to give you a 1 minute time to answer.
Perhaps challenging something you've just said there, Corey. What role do politicians really play? Because I think there is a leadership role for our politicians in this question.
No, I definitely agree. I think what we came to was the politicians need to be informed by us as industry. So if we just let them go and make a policy decision and no one's speaking to them, which in my opinion has happened, it really has led to poor outcomes. So we really need to stand up as leaders within our industry and people like yourself to go talk to the politicians and go, this is what the whole industry thinks you should be doing, please support us, that type of thing.
Wonderful. Alrighty. That's it for questions.
Are you better than me right now? Not long to go. Okay, so we are Group 7. I'll just run through a quick intro. So we have Lyle from Tas Networks, Samira from Energy Queensland, and Manju from Endeavour Energy. So we were given our strategic challenge by Glenn Thompson, who is the General Manager for Electricity Networks, City Power Core, City Power, Power Core. Is that it? Thanks, mate. So our challenge question is, how can the power sector reframe the network narrative to better address the needs and perspectives of customers, government regulators, and other key stakeholders? So it's a bit of a doozy. So we had a chat with Glenn and got a bit more context around this. So as network operators strive to maintain a safe, reliable, and affordable network, we also face the big challenge of effectively communicating the complexities and realities of maintaining the network to our customers, government regulators, and other key stakeholders. So to help tackle this question and present it in a bit more of a relatable way, we've also done a metaphor, and thank God no one chose the similar one. So we've chosen a ship that's at sea. There's our ship. So I'll explain our ship. So imagine the power sector is the ship on the left. It's been at sea, sailing smoothly, been on the same course, powered by fossil fuels, with very minimal changes over many decades. Now, along comes a global push for sustainability. We need to retrofit this ship to be powered by new, cleaner engines and from renewable energy sources. And this retrofit needs to be done while keeping this ship afloat. So this process will not only involve newer engines and new technologies, we also need to overhaul the ship's navigation system or our regulatory frameworks. We also need to retrain the crew of the ship so they'll be able to use and maintain this new ship, or redeveloping the workforce. And most importantly, and this will become evident with the rest of our team's slides, we need to ensure our passengers or our customers are informed and supportive of the changes and have trust in the course that this new retrofitted ship will take. Keeping in mind again, this all needs to be done while keeping it afloat. This all highlights the complexity and urgency of the energy transition and the challenges us as network operators face. I'll now pass over to Lyle, who'll give us an insight into the current state of play.
Thanks, Cal. The next one. I think we've heard a bit of the current state of play from a few of the other groups today, so I thought I might mix mine up a little bit and do it in the form of a sea shanty. No, I'm just going to read the notes verbatim. Sorry to disappoint. So as Bean's described, we've inherited a network originally designed with classical large synchronous generation. And there's generally more renewables distributed throughout the network, which wasn't how it was originally designed in the legacy system. We're also have evolving regulatory frameworks, and I think we've heard from some of the other presenters, or at least the professionals have in the last few weeks, about lagging regulations or not quite up to scratch, or lagging benchmarking and indicators that won't account for the step changes coming forward in the transition to renewables. And in spite of all this complexity, so policymakers have made some simply framed commitments to the public, because they'd possibly undermine themselves if they put all this overcomplicated engineering nuance into their commitments. And on top of this, energy consumer behaviours and expectations have been evolving in ways such as, I'm moving. Some of them want to be able to export and share in the benefits of the renewable transition, possibly all at the same time when the sun's shining, which isn't always helpful. Post-COVID, I think the AER's shown with the value of customer reliability, they've got higher needs for reliable supply of power, especially with extra work from home. But paradoxically, I think we're seeing some customers are less tolerant to price rises. So we want to pay more for more reliable supply, but we don't want to pay more. What have we got left? Sorry. Oh, and finally, the network's more expensive to maintain. I think Gabby's group covered it off a bit, due to more frequent and severe weather events and climate change. I'm now going to hand off to Samira. Oh, hang on. Let's get the mic going.
David, thank you. I'll dive deeper into the stakeholders. So who are we working for? Who are we working to change the narrative for? So our major stakeholders are residential and industrial customers, the regulators, the TNSPs as everyone has talked about, the retailers, landowners, generators, regulators, and many more, right? We are working together. Everyone, there's so much representation from each of these stakeholders over here. Just one of them is missing over here. Or every one of us is the customer. So that customer, I'll just take you to a deep dive in one of our customer. Can you see that picture over there? How's that family looking? Happy? So happy? Little too happy? Oh my God.
uh, they are too stressed. And this is Larry and his beautiful wife, two beautiful children, and he lives in a far suburb with 3-bedroom house. He has a house on mortgage and 2 cars, one from which is on loan. So he has a lot to pay, he has a lot to worry about, and we can see that from the picture, right? He's stressed, confused, depressed, angry, even the kids are crying, we can see from the picture. Like, that's a ripple effect. His challenges are rising cost of living, time problem, unhappy of the network changes. So regulators are sitting and the authorities are sitting on one end and other side are customers. There's a massive wall between both of these. Customers knows what's happening, around 10%, 20%, but not all about it. So we need to communicate, as we all are focusing too much on communication today, we need to communicate, we need to break that wall between customers and regulators and the authorities, that what we are doing and what network changes are ahead. I would ask Manju to come over and just give us more description what we can do for Larry and people like Larry.
All right. Quick second, put yourself in the shoe of Larry's. How does he feel? All right? How can we get to him? That's all we are trying to solve here. We heard lots of speakers talking. We heard about the different presentations today. Most of them are talking the same things. So I'm just going to skip over it. What we are going to do next? What can we do? So I just put some words on there. I just want all of you to think, we need to change the way we communicate to the customers. What's the best way to do it? How will something that I want to communicate, the customer will take it the best and the most efficient way? That's the way we need to communicate to the customers. As with the previous presentation, we also align with how they think and how we need to do this the most efficient way. Can I guess, anybody, what is the best way if I want to communicate something to you and you will listen? Can you give me one quality that will help? Just one.
Make it relatable.
Relatable, absolutely. Bring them along the journey, yeah? I want to feel that they understand my pain. I want to see that they can see the pain that I go through, the limitations that I have, and they can actually relate to my stresses. They respect my problems. That's when I listen. That's the way we need to communicate. That's the only way our customers are going to go with us in this journey. So let's do our bit. First one, when we discussed all of the presentations today actually, as well as the last 2 weeks we were discussing, it all ended up, one of the most important attribute which stayed up for me and my team was trust. We have to build the trust. We've broken it somewhere along the line. So do that. Having transparency in the communication, clearer policies, procedures, ask them what the problem is. Get to their level, not stand from here. Not from a technical expertise. Go to their level, understand their problems, come up with transparent rules. Make it easy for them to understand the technical complexities. Respect, that's another thing. You give respect, you take respect. And like Ryan said previously, use the power of AI. We tried, I know everybody tried during the presentation, how much value we got, and we are engineers, we can smartly streamline and filter the right ones, right? We do those. We do those to make sure we power and harness the power of AI. We should share the profit. We should get them with us, okay? I get incentive, I am in. Got a thing. Poor Larry, he needs more money. He needs some support. And lead with your heart. That's one of the main things. You got to lead with your heart. That's how we got to change the narrative. Above and beyond. Below. So above when I say regulators, below I say customers. All the customers. So with doing all those things, the most important thing we came up was intentional, empathetic, and clear communication. That which will take us from the old ship, which Cal showed us, to the beautiful ship that we have. And our new taglines are going to be power grid that cares, customer first always, trusted distributed partner, a transparent, trustworthy, and reliable network, and embedded with the state-of-art technology. Thanks, everyone.
Any questions? The cat would also come up. This is his cat.
That is Barnaby. That is Lyle's cat.
Questions? All right, one up there. Who else has got a question? Hands up, please. So Harsh has got one.
We've got one online as well.
One online. All right, we'll go with you, Harsh.
Thanks, guys. Great presentation. Harshikar from Endeavour Energy. I really liked your point about leading with love and respect, right? Like, so the question I had as well is, you know, putting yourself in the shoes of an exec, right, when they're going to the board and they've got some really challenging discussions to have, right? How do you reconcile that approach of, you know, leading with the right values, leading with respect, putting the customer first, versus some of the board's concerns or maybe some of the investors' concerns, right? And put them together.
Thank you for the question. Anybody? Okay, very good question. I hope there are a few execs here who can actually help me. So we need to get the point from their perspective too. They are running a business. They have to make sure they get the value for money. They need to have a positive NPV in a few years. So we got to put ourselves in their shoe, be empathetic from their side, and make decisions that actually ticks them too. We can get perspective from them of how we can actually help, and we should be the middlemen, people who can actually think technically and get a bit more training on being empathetic and be more personable, twist the narrative, present it to the other part. So this is no straight-cut answer, but we can come up with a way. Need some work.
All right, a question from our online audience. Our customers are becoming more informed and often have varying opinions. How do you propose to identify a single path forward and achieve agreement with all?
So all the customers, this should be centralized, that everyone said that all the different authorities are working in their own way, with their own policies, right? We need to bring everyone together and just push out one perspective. So the customer, I had that point in my slides, that customer is disoriented. He has different views and he don't know what to do next, right? And he don't have a clarity where the network is going. So we need to, together as engineering community, it's a very beautiful community, very diverse from all over Australia. We need to come together, especially the execs. They have to make this call and push a beautiful way forward for the customer. We all need to work for the customer. That's my say.
All right, more questions, please. They were spot on 12 minutes with their presentation, so we've got a nice bit of time.
Thank you, Chelsea from AMO. I loved your example of Larry and his family. Just wondering, did you guys think about what kind of incentives or messaging would bring people like Larry and his family along on the journey?
So I'm going to talk from my perspective as a customer. I'm thinking we have lots of expenses that we have, and like previous presentations, this is not the priority for us, right? For us, the priority is providing for the family, have good education for the kids, but they are not realizing that the impact of electricity and the transition actually has the impact that they have on the family, providing the food or education. If we can somehow relate it and tell them and make it very clear, the narrative that, see, what we are trying to achieve is not from one side only. It is actually supporting you to grow and support your family, which really wants to, to tick his box of how a perfect family is. So that is one way we can manage, and that's what probably I will also help. Incentives, how we can do it probably is, maybe we need to be a bit smart with dividing it based on the social status or economic or their economic status in life, in this world, have some kind of a program that will actually help them to support that renewable transition, because we have to do it anyway. If somebody can't do it, let's take them along the journey somehow and help them. All right.
Yeah, just a quick bit.
No worries.
Just like the variable exports we saw yesterday, maybe I'm not normal, but I thought it'd be nice to participate in the market as a distribution customer.
All right, more questions? Oh.
Now we are comfortable, you can ask questions.
Hi, it's Sam from AMO. I think this is a really challenging question because there's a bit of a misconception and lack of trust because of the narrative that we're putting out to our communities. The long-term solution in transitioning to renewables is the right way forward, but the messaging that it is cheaper is not necessarily being reflected in their bills. And I just would be interested in how we can reframe that narrative so they can see bigger picture and longer term.
Yeah, because it is tricky, because it's just generating per watt. Maybe the renewables are a lot cheaper, but then actually factoring it in and doing the step change in the grid is a problem that I haven't answered. Any other ideas?
Yeah, so it's obviously a long-term thing, right? Ultimately, we want to get to a point where there's no electricity usage charges on someone's power bill. The reason we chose customers is to have a long-term plan. Well, the reason we chose customers over government as our key stakeholder is that we got feedback from Pete yesterday. I might be jumping his question here, but we got feedback from Pete yesterday that in our report, we didn't really mention too much about government. And the reason for that was government's temporary. So 3 years' time, there could be a new government in. And that usually means new power policies. So the only real constant and long-term plan for that is customers. They're the constant. They don't change. They're here forever. So it's not really answering your question in terms of, not really answering your question in terms of how do we convince the customer of that, but that was our intention of choosing customers over other authorities.
We've got another online question, and this is going to be a the infamous lightning rounds. Do you think the network transition conflicts with the customer needing better affordability? How do you balance or manage this?
In 30 seconds.
I am the least technical. I'm a structural engineer talking to an electrical engineer, so I'm not sure whether I'll answer that correctly, technically.
In 30 seconds.
Oh, come on, David. It's by communication. Sorry, guys. It has to be town halls. It's about having the communication, clear channels. It's about taking them along the journey, like we previously said. It's about creating authorities which can be middleman between the customers as well as the regulators. Have a middleman who can actually translate the technical into non-technical. That's few of the. Yeah. So they are the few ways we can do. It's only communication, and it has to be empathetic. So that's way. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Prakriti, and I'm part of Group 5. Also part of Group 5 is Manoj, Apurav, and Harsh. So our challenge statement was presented by Carl, who's kindly sitting in the front row here. And the challenge statement presented was, how can we modernize contracting and project delivery models in transmission by adopting approaches from other infrastructure sectors? As we all know, transmission sector is currently seeing a rapid expansion of high voltage infrastructure, which is driven by the evolving government policies. David? Good? Cool. All right. AEMO's 2024 ISP forecasted that indicated close to 10,000 kilometres of transmission lines will be needed by 2050, out of which 5,000 kilometres are to be delivered in the next decade. What we're also seeing currently and in the last 5 years is that we're substantial challenges in project delivery with our transmission projects, running over costs and significant delays. So let me take you on a little story. Why is this happening? So traditionally in the past, we've been using EPC and DNC contracting models, which have been quite rigid and one way. These models have led to lack of contractor interest and overall inherits a low risk appetite and also has a zero collaborative environment. Then what's happened is we've seen a change in government policy, triggering that in energy transition. This has seen a shift into the supply-demand chain and also investors to diversify into renewables. So what we're facing right now is basically a constraint in resourcing, SMEs, increased pressure on the supply chain, lack of standardization, lack of contractor competition, lack of accountability, and delays in getting approvals. All of this is leading to significant cost escalations and significant project delays. So as a group, we were thinking about what do we need to do to manage this in the future. So some of the things we were considering are greater collaboration, early contractor engagement, risk and incentive sharing, use of different contracting and delivery methods, standardizations with contracts and materials, and also local manufacturing where and if possible. Now I'm going to hand over to Manoj, who's going to talk about our key stakeholders.
Thanks, Prakriti. So on the next slide, as you can see, like the mapping of the stakeholders we have conducted and identified the key stakeholders. But before jumping on further into details, I just wanted to define what is stakeholders first, because I think some of you may not have clear understanding of that. So just in the simple sentence or simple words, it's an individual person or the groups that may have vested interest in the organization or the project that the organization is processing. So having said that, they may have certain influence on the project. They will be helping you in the decision-making process. They also ask you to analyze some aspect of the scope or the deliverables, and that may have some impact on the project as well. And the last but not the least, but they will also ask you in the project buy-ins that will have that will drive your project to the success. One other question I just want to ask to the audience and also to the online participants. How many of you indirectly or directly engage in any project consultation, not through your organization, but the external parties? Can you just raise your hand? How many of you think that your voice is heard? Very few. And how many of you believe that the project is a success? Again, less numbers. So that itself says how important is your stakeholder mapping and engaging them on the right state and making the project to the success. So on my next slide, so this is the activity that we did as a part of the stakeholder identification process. So on the axis of influence versus the interest of the different levels, we started mapping out the stakeholders. They can be contractors, service providers, manufacturers, legals, governments, TNSPs, EPA, also service providers, councils, shires, and lastly, local community and few others. So once we identify those ones, we start putting them in the manner of their influence or power and their interest into the project. Once that's all ticked, we went to the process like mapping out on the horizon like a 4-quadrant, and that that helped us to map out the actual, like how we deal with the stakeholders and manage closely or just need to be informed, do some regular communications and monitor them on the go. This is just the quick slide that the mapping that we conducted and what we collected as a group activity. The further, this one is particularly drilling down onto the question that Carl given us and concentrating on the major EPC firms having the issues. So mainly like a current market volatility, risk management, cost overruns, recruiting, and retaining key SMEs within the organization. The second one, the external factors that that is driven by market demand and supply chains, suppliers as well, the project execution models, and so forth. And the outcome that will drive the project to the success is basically market demand and economic conditions. I will hand out to Apura, who will further explain into the details of how the different models we defined in this presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Manoj. So I'm going to talk about some of the innovative solutions that are currently being used in the industry throughout the world to deliver the complex infrastructure project. We'll start with project alliancing. This one is a collaborative contract model where all the parties come together and sign one contract. And they share the risk and the rewards. One analogy that I used myself to understand this contract model was you bring all these superheroes together, sign one contract to destroy Thanos. Everyone's working towards one goal. What are the benefits? Everyone's working towards one goal. There's better collaboration. There's innovation. What are the risks? There may be some trust issues. Not all parties have the same capabilities. There may be some decision-making issues where you need consensus. So the decision-making can become a bit challenging. One of the case study that we found out where this kind of project contract model was used was in Melbourne's Northern Sewerage project, where the project was a success. It was delivered on time and within budget. We're going to discuss the incentive-based public-private partnership contracts. PPP contracts are pretty common, where the private companies are basically rewarded based on their financial performance, and they deliver the projects on behalf of the governments. We're going to discuss two types of contracts: incentivized target cost contracts and schedule-based incentive contracts. Incentivized target, in these ITC contracts or incentivized target cost contracts, instead of agreeing on one fixed price, we agree on target cost. Both parties, asset owners as well as the contractors, agree on one target cost. And at the end of the project, it is benchmarked against the actual cost. And if the actual cost comes less than the target cost, the savings are shared. However, if the actual cost comes more than the target cost, the cost overruns are also shared between the parties, depending on the contractual structure. The benefits are, it's more cost efficient, it gives better control to the asset owners. However, some of the risks are, it's very hard to estimate target cost without doing any kind of designs or any kind of studies. There can be complexity, the project governance can be quite challenging, and also there can be complexity to manage all parties during this particular contract model. Now comes the schedule-based incentivized contracts. In this kind of contract, usually the project milestones are set pretty early in the project, and the contractors are awarded based on their successful completion of the project milestones. So if they reach the project milestones on time or earlier than time, then they are rewarded. However, there are financial penalties in forms of liquidated damages if they fail to do so. I'll bring out my Marvel analogy again. It's like you now sign a contract with a company called Avengers, but this time you tell them you need to destroy each Infinity Stone one time. Like, on particular time and particular sequence, and you'll be rewarded accordingly. Benefits, it's faster. The project delivery is usually faster because you're getting rewarded to do so. The time management is much better. Both parties have more skin in the game. The cost savings are more for asset owners, and there's better performance for contractors as well. However, the risks are the quality can be compromised because most of the focus is on schedule, sticking to the schedule. So it becomes very important that your quality management plans are in place and they are monitored strictly throughout the process. The last one is the progressive design build. In this particular contract model, both the design and the construction goes hand in hand. So meaning this kind of model can be divided into two stages. One can be pre-construction, where asset owners picks a design contractor and a construction contractor based on their qualifications. Then all the parties get together and work on the designs studies, and usually designs are taken to a 45% to 85% design stage. Once all parties are comfortable with the scope, then the negotiations start on which is called guaranteed maximum price. They agree on one guaranteed maximum price, GMP, and once all parties agree on the GMP, we move on to the next phase, which is the construction phase. The designs are progressed to IFC stage, and once the designs are completed, the construction commences. Usually the risks are passed on to the contractor in this case. Some of the benefits for this particular model is it mitigates the risk of uncertain scope, because usually we have early contractor involvement. The scope is very clear, interfaces are very clear amongst all stakeholders. It has improved cost certainty, and it gives more control to the asset owner as well. Some of the challenges for implementation of this model is it's very hard to negotiate GMP. It requires asset owner sophistication, meaning asset owner should be qualified enough to know the actual cost of the project and how to negotiate the GMPs. The case study for this particular project that we found out was a water infrastructure project in Illinois, and where the project was, a GMP was actually set after 60% of designs were completed. Now I would like to invite Harsh.
Cool, all right. Excellent, thank you, Proof. So it's interesting, right? So we've seen a lot of contract and delivery models. I'll touch on quickly, go to the next slide. Ooh. Right, so I think this is a key theme that's come out in a few of the presentations, focusing on collaboration and planning and delivery, right? So for this one over here, where we're quite isolated in our approach in terms of the contractor, the transmission planning agencies and the like, let's have a glue that connects it all together. So there's an interesting case study in South Africa where they've set up a government technical advisory centre to kind of coordinate it all together. We bring in the experts, in-house consultation. It's not adding layer bureaucracy, but it's really providing that coordination and delivery as well. There are a few drawbacks, obviously. You add a layer of bureaucracy. What does that do to planning? Does it slow it up? But I think the key theme of collaboration comes out anyway, right? Current workforce challenges, right? So I think this has also been touched on before. We have skills shortages in critical areas, in electrical engineering, right? Secondary systems, civil and the like, declining entry into power systems careers. So what do we do about it, right? A few things over here. Number 3, incentivize utility-led workforce growth, foster sector collaboration, really coordinating so that we can do skill sharing between sectors as well is quite important. And revisit entry pathways into technical roles. You know, do you need strong high requirements to actually enter into some of these professions, or can you actually rethink the way we put our workforce together to deliver some of these projects? Cool. So that's pretty much it. So probably to recap, you know, we've come up with some new models, but I think the key theme is how do we collaborate better between the contractor, the DNSP, the TNSPs, and our government to get better solutions. Excellent. Beautiful. Just on time.
To the second. All right. So 5 minutes of questions. All right, what have we got? Who's got a question? Over here.
Nice presentation, guys. Anu from Energy Queensland. So, Apoorv, in the incentive-based project, what's the success rate so far? Or do you think would be the success rate based on your experience?
Good question. I'll give you a great answer. I don't know. Sorry, I haven't really checked the success rate of these models. So, but that is something for future works, I would say.
We were given wise advice from someone who said, don't be afraid to say you don't know, but don't embrace it that much. All right, more questions. Come on, make it. All right, one of our executive speakers.
I set the question, so I get to ask the even harder questions. Isn't that how it works? So Carl Palongo from GHD. In your research that you guys have done, well done by the way, great presentation. In your research that you've done, are there any markets or industries that you think have done the transition, I suppose, to be able to deal with larger programs of work effectively, using different delivery models, more collaborative delivery models, better than others? Or is there a clear winner, or one or two different markets or market segments that you came across? I saw you gave some good examples in your presentations.
Yep. In our research, I think, talking about Australia, I think rail companies or train companies are much better in adopting new types of contracts. I think there's one called NEC4, or a UK-based contract that is currently being used in Sydney metros or Sydney trains. So they adopt to the new contracts models early, whereas our industry, we are slightly lagging behind. I think we'll need to catch up with new contract models, be more ready to share the risk with the contractors. I think also some road infrastructure projects, they adopt new types of models. I think we've seen, one of the models that we've seen was the incentivized public-private partnership that was used in India to deliver the project. The project was delivered, I think, 3 months earlier than the actual timeline. And it was a $2.1 billion project as well. So that's a good case study for us to adopt and learn, and then bring all the learnings into our industry.
All right, time for one last question and a 1 minute answer. We're 1 minute and 45 seconds left.
Thank you for your presentation. Lauren Lim from Energy Queensland. How can smaller contractors in this ecosystem be protected from larger players and predatory behaviour?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's about bringing them along in the journey. I think, at the end of the day, it is quite a small industry, even though the pipeline of work is quite huge as well. So I don't think it would be a mistake for contractors, TNSPs, to kind of cast aside some of these small, especially specialist equipment suppliers, specialist contractors, right? And so I think it could be in the contractual arrangements as well, right? You don't just go for the big boys club, and have one contractor that does it all. It's collaborative, right? And I think it's probably about bringing everyone on the journey to understand what the main goal is here, right? We are here to deliver transmission projects, but we're here to support our communities as well throughout this. It was really good with Vishnu and their team's presentation on, local Indigenous communities and how we can support them. I think in this journey, we've got to support our local contractors as well, right? Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that will be impacted. They're the ones that will create those job opportunities in those local areas.
Cool. We now have 23 seconds for clapping, if you'd like to use that time.
Yeah. Good afternoon. We are the amazing Group 3. So our challenge question is, how can the power sector balance efficiency improvements with cost, scalability, and flexibility when designing and upgrading critical infrastructure? So this question is coming from. So this question is coming from Ed Wilson from the Wilson Transformer. So So today's agenda is the introduction to the team, understanding the challenge, insights and the recommendation for the actions, and the recommendation for the professional development. So I'm Dong Xiao Wang from the Australia Energy Market Operator based in Melbourne. I have my colleague Mihira from the South Australia Power Network. I also have Kai from from Horizon Power, from Albert from Western Power, and Jay from Energy Queensland. Now I'm going to hand over to Kai, talk about understanding the challenge.
Right. Thank you, Dom. So, so our challenge question, which was set by Ed Wilson from Wilson Transformers, he asked us, how can the power sector balance efficiency improvements with cost, scalability, and flexibility when designing and upgrading critical infrastructure? Some of the major issues that we are currently impacting the current state are that, Australia is moving to a decarbonisation model. So back in 2022, so not too long ago, there's a Climate Change Act that was enacted where it stated that by 2030, we have to reduce our emissions by 43% when compared to 2005 levels. And by 2050, this will be at net zero. This mandate has actually opened up some new renewable energy zones, which has then brought in new investment from the private sector, and the TNSPs and AEMO, they're working really hard to operate the NEM and to support these new connections. And on a distribution level, things are also changing too. So you've got high uptake of rooftop solar. So these are your mum and dads who are putting solar on their roofs to try and offset their energy usage. Energy used to flow one way, now it flows two ways. So we need to come up with smarter infrastructure. Now I'll pass you over to Albert.
All right, now I'll talk about key challenges. I'll now talk about all the key challenges that we're facing. So there will be a high cost involved in upgrading all the critical infrastructures. So for example, transformer. Transformer is one of our critical piece of infrastructures. So higher efficiency transformer, so reduce energy losses and support sustainability goals. So however, they require more premium materials such as advanced cold steel and copper windings, and this will significantly impact the overall cost. So on top of that, if we continue to push for higher efficiency transformer, OEMs might find it hard to source all materials, and NSB also struggle to get technical skill resources to work on the project. And this will cause significantly delay to the global supply chain and impact the progress and the success of upgrading the entire critical infrastructures. So currently, there are also lack of standardization among all the NSPs. So it is a challenge for OEMs to fulfill each customer's needs. However, it actually poses more challenge and risk for all the NSPs because due to the long lead time order of the specific design equipments. Another challenge that we're facing is obtaining a social license. It presents several challenges, including community anxiety, misinformation, and the need for the transparency engagement. So installing transmission lines, for example, installing a transmission lines on Aboriginal heritage land will require extensive community engagement and bring them along the journey. Now Kai will talk about the traditional energy flow.
Right, thanks Albert. So traditional energy or a single one-way flow starts at the power stations. These are your synchronous generators which are burning your fossil fuels and creating the electricity. That's then stepped up to a transmission voltage up to 500 kV and brought across really long distances until we get close by to our major cities, which is then stepped down to a sub-transmission, or in the West we call it transmission. 132 or 66, which is then again brought down to a distribution voltage 33, 22, 11 in your distribution network, and finally bringing it down to 415 kV for use by our customers. So I'll pass you over to Albert.
All right, so now I'll talk about future grid electricity. So in future, there will be several type of renewable generation connection coming into the system. As we all know, we have wind, solar farm, as well as BESS system. So how will distribution network will look like in future? So future energy system will be decentralized with smart grids and energy storage systems are being used to manage renewable energy variability and improve the grid stability. So more rooftop solar, behind meter batteries, and community battery will be installed in our community. So moving forward, we also have distributed energy resource management system, which also known as DERMS, will be used to monitor, manage, and optimize our distribution energy resources. All right, Kai will now talk about stakeholders engagement.
Great. So part of this understanding the question better is that we map out our stakeholders. So during the 2 weeks at API, we actually were involved with a mapping canvas exercise. So our team has come up with that map that you see on your screen. So just quickly going through them. The top left quadrant, which is your high influence, low interest. These are your governments, your regulators, AEMO. These stakeholders have a significant influence over the industry practices, but we really want to leave all these critical infrastructure upgrades to your NSPs. Looking at the top right quadrant, these are your high influence, high interest, your TNSPs, your DNSPs, and your advocacy groups. These stakeholders have a high influence on how the grid will be run in the future, and we will be responsible for the migration from the old fossil fuel synchronous generators to your renewables and energy storage. NSPs have a balance of trying to balance the new technologies with value for money. Your bottom right is your low influence, high interest. These are your customers. These are your mum and dads. These are your local communities. They just want safe, reliable, affordable electricity, but also they want to be brought on the journey. And lastly, this is your bottom left, which is your low influence and low interest. These are your energy developers, these are your consultants, your retailers, and your contractors. So although they don't have a lot of influence, they do stand to benefit a lot from all these technological improvements. And now I'll pass you over to Jay.
Thank you, Kai. I'm going to talk about the recommendation for action to address the challenge. Key insights. High efficiency in general comes at a high cost, so benefits must justify investment. The societal value of moving to higher efficiency levels needs to be carefully considered to avoid unintended consequences, such as ending up with a lower efficiency, more emissions, and higher overall costs. There's a need for harmonized and adaptive standard across jurisdictions, and there is a need to align Australian standard and New Zealand standard with global benchmarks. This could streamline the import and resolve global supply chain constraints. And finally, it is very important to incorporate life cycle emission and scalability into planning. So recommendation for action, the first one is government must consult with the NSPs and industry stakeholder to ensure that the global goals are set realistic. This collaboration will break down barrier and enable the industry to meet the targets. The government must also consider the impact on supply chains and promote local manufacturing through incentives and grants. The government must provide greater flexibility for consumer to better manage the integration of DERs. The AEMO, in collaboration with AER and AEMC, must support initiative for energy transformation and sustainability through policies and incentives. The adoption of new technologies such as DOMS will significantly enhance the management of network. And finally, OEMs should be encouraged to invest in the local factories to support the supply of critical infrastructure. The OEMs can facilitate better agreement on specification with NSPs, thereby enhancing the production. Now I will hand over to my colleague, Dr. Dong.
So continue with the recommendations. So from the energy user and customer, They play a vital role in the power industry, so their feedback on the service delivery can drive the operational improvements. For the energy developers and the consultants, they must work closely with transmission and distribution network service providers to build a future network based on established standards, and also establishing a national standard for critical infrastructure will enhance the communication and collaboration across the industry. The implementation roadmap outlines a structured approach to address the challenges identified. So in the short term, establishing governance groups and conducting infrastructure audits will help identify the gaps. Medium-term gaps goals include harmonizing standards and initiating piloting projects, while long-term strategies focus on scaling modular design and ensuring policy alignment for sustainability. Now I will hand over to Mihir.
Thank you, Don. And thank you, everyone, all our audience, for staying back with us until the end. Really appreciate. I know I'm the last presenter in the strategic project presentation, so I'll be quick so we can go out and party tonight. So, I want to highlight, is it in there? Yeah, not that one. Sorry. Apologies, guys. So recommendations for professional development. I want to highlight the phrase here, energy transition is powered by people. As you know, the energy sector is currently grappling with a significant skills shortage. Energy professionals are not only integral to the development of new infrastructure and energy solutions, but they are also a key input to informing and educating our public on greener energy solutions. So in our team, we agreed that availability of skilled resources and labor locally is an essential factor in managing critical infrastructure upgrade costs with the benefits of improved energy efficiencies these projects deliver. So with that in mind, thank you, Kai. Our recommendations for setting up the future workforce, specifically for individuals who are interested in partaking in the energy transition journey, nurture curiosity, engaging in industry working groups, energy conferences, and university research programs. That's a key. And also cultivate personal growth mindset to stay engaged in the new technological advances. Be adaptable, embrace change, and be willing to take on new challenges. And as many of you have said today in your presentations, the soft skill. Manju quite clearly highlighted how you need to communicate with your heart. I'm a great believer in that as well. So enhancing your public speaking skills to effectively engage with diverse group of stakeholders that we are dealing with, especially the energy consumers. So in the interest of time, thank you for the reminder. We have also looked at technical skills that different roles within the industry, including the undergrads and graduates, could do. But I won't discuss those points in detail. Just wanted to highlight as undergraduates, if you are in the audience, for the seeking out internships in companies specializing in renewable energy is a great way to gain practical skills that will benefit the future energy system. And as for the graduates, it is important to proactively seek professional certifications that could positively impact the energy transition as well, and also learning from experienced energy professionals like the people here in the group, in the room today. Thank you, Kai. And to finish off, there are two other groups that we looked at, PhD candidates. We recommend cultivating stronger partnerships with energy industries. We've heard that from a great speaker a couple of days ago as well. Also prioritizing projects that directly address the issues that we've talked about throughout the day today. So, and lastly, for the professionals, industry professionals like you and I, recommend building strong professional connections, network by attending industry events, joining professional groups, and connecting with peers like we did in the last 2 weeks at the API Summer School. And through these platforms, also lobbying for policy changes that could facilitate the development of energy efficient, cost effective, and scalable solutions rapidly. So, how am I doing for time? Just finally, the conclusion. So in addressing our challenge question, how best to balance the costs of infrastructure upgrades with the energy efficiencies that those upgrades deliver, we believe as a team that there is no one-size-fits-all solution. It has to be a cost-benefit analysis, case by case. You could prioritize implementation cost, operational cost, or indeed the efficiencies that you require, energy losses, and also considering supply chain concerns, scalability, lastly, future carbon emissions requirements as well. So thank you all.
Well done. Lucky last, well done, squeaked in on time.
Yep.
Nice. Okay, so any questions for lucky last? Okay, one over there. Who else has got a question, just so we can manage our time? It will come out. Get my steps up for the day. Who had their hand up? Sorry. Here we go.
Thanks, group, for your insightful presentation. Myself, Bhargav from Wilson Transformer Company. So I have a couple of questions. First is, as a transformer manufacturer, as one of the OEM, how you think is critical in compared to the lead times of transformer in the project delivery of BESS project? How crucial it plays a role? And second is, if that's the case, as a stakeholder, would you consider it as an important stakeholder, and where you would put that in your stakeholder matrix?
Thank you for that question. Yes, so I would, the insights that Carol and her team shared around pre-planning your project, that is quite a good insights. Getting involved or involving the the OEMs right up front at the pre-planning stage and getting them through the journey, I think is the most important thing. So for them to understand the design specs and what the requirements are, so they can start the procurement process well in advance before the construction. Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I think in this journey as well, I did mention it just now, I think one of the key challenges that we have is, different TNSP or DNSP have come up with all the different standards, and that's why there's caused quite a big challenge for OEMs to kind of manufacture all this customized design. So I think it's important for all the TNSP and DNSP to work together to come up with some standardization among our standards requirement for all these different equipment that definitely will help our OEMs and bring them along the journey.
Yeah, I can add a little bit on that one. The proposal from the government to increase the efficiency improvement on the distribution transformer. So one of the key challenges is to get the resources. For example, for the high efficiency transformer, we need electrical steel, grain-oriented electrical steel, and the resource is very scarce, and it comes from the overseas. And because of the electrical vehicle, etc., there is a more challenge to that resources, because electrical vehicle, they also use about 8 to 10 kilogram of the steel. And when we did the factory visit to the Wilson Power Transformer, they explained they have a very good relationship with their overseas supplier, and 30 years, 40 years of engagement with the same supplier is helping them a lot, so they can source those scarce raw material. Maybe the OEMs like Wilson, they can develop those sort of relationships, so they don't need to worry about the scarce material.
Alrighty, we are 83 seconds away. Okay, so one last question that will be 7 seconds long, and then a quick answer.
Harshikard from Endeavour Energy. What do you guys think about the proposal to match distribution transformer efficiency standards in Australia to match what's happening in the UK?
Thanks, Harsh. So, yeah, that's something that we discussed with Ed Wilson during our sessions online. So at the moment, under AS 2374.1.2, we have a MEPS and a HEPS. So I think the HEPS is forgive me if I'm wrong, is about 99.74% efficient to be able to obtain that. So Europe has proposed 2 steps further, which, yeah, if we were to adopt it, it would increase the price of the transformer by 41%.
Alrighty, I said we would finish today at 2:05 p.m. What time is it? 2:05 p.m. Thank you, everyone, right? So thank you, final group. It's a tough gig. You did really well, so well done. Thank you.